Welcome to my channel, guys. If you're looking for an amazing novel, visit my Patreon page. Your support will help turn this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this journey. Chapter 91 Inches the distant sky. A beam of light with a faint hint of rainbow colors descended from the heavens. Seeing this phenomenon, Syd had a thoughtful expression. To cause such a commotion at this time, it must be Asgard's Bifrost. Asgard's Bifrost, while a planetary weapon, also serves as an intergalactic transportation device, capable of transporting people to any location within the 9 realms. The 9 realms, in scientific terms, are 9 relatively distant star systems, with the solar system being one of them. When the Bifrost transports someone, it creates this kind of light beam phenomenon. If I'm not mistaken, this should be Thor intruding into the realm of the frost giants, Jotunheim. Syd pondered. Due to nearly starting a war, Odin stripped Thor of his powers and banished him to Midgard, one of the 9 realms, which is Earth. Ultimately, Odin believed Thor was too arrogant and eager for conquest, lacking the qualities of a true king. Odin had high expectations for his son, wanting Thor to become more compassionate, humble, and protective. Only when Thor possessed these qualities could he become a worthy king. To achieve this, Odin stripped Thor of his divine powers, hoping he would learn humility and other virtues on Earth as a mortal. He even cast a spell on Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. In simple terms, whoever could lift Mjolnir would be deemed worthy of possessing Thor's power. Only when Thor became worthy of the hammer could he lift it again. Watching the distant light beam, Syd couldn't help but become intrigued. One had to admit, Odin was tough on Thor. The spell on Mjolnir was real, anyone who could lift it would truly gain Thor's power. Even Odin probably didn't anticipate that someone on Earth could lift Mjolnir, right? If I can lift it. Syd stroked his chin. Based on known information, lifting Mjolnir required a kind, pure, and selfless character. Captain America was one such person, and only such individuals could lift Mjolnir. In contrast, even heroes like Iron Man, Hawkeye, Hulk, and War Machine couldn't lift it. Though they were heroes with righteous hearts, their minds weren't pure enough to lift the hammer. Of course, this was based on the movies. In the comics, the only condition for lifting Mjolnir was being deemed worthy by Mjolnir. That hammer had its own logic, judging situations and recognizing different people in different contexts. In times of crisis, it would grant the privilege to lift it to a hero who could be a savior, regardless of past grievances. Of course, after such situations, the person would still be unable to lift Mjolnir, showing its selective nature. Apart from this, members of Odin's family were the easiest to lift Mjolnir. Even if they weren't perfect, arrogant, or proud, as long as their thoughts hadn't deviated significantly, they could usually lift Mjolnir. Syd didn't believe Thor's heart wasn't tainted with arrogance and pride, nor that he had a pure heart. Maybe I should give it a try, Syd thought hesitantly. After a moment, he decided to try. After all, there was no harm in trying, and if he succeeded, he would gain Thor's power for free. With this in mind, under the dark night sky, he moved, his hands glowing red, flying quickly towards the phenomenon. In the distance, a car was driving through a desolate field, with 2 young women and an old man with white hair, all marveling at the scene in the distance. They had come to collect weather data, but they ended up witnessing this spectacle. The sky glowed like a beautiful aurora. A beam of light connected heaven and earth, accompanied by a tornado and lightning. Despite this, they continued driving towards the phenomenon while filming, embodying the reckless spirit of Americans. By the time they realized the danger, it was too late. The vehicle was caught in the storm, making them dizzy. Bang! Suddenly, as they frantically turned the steering wheel, a figure crashed into the car window, cracking the glass. Screams and exclamations ensued. Fortunately, the storm passed quickly. As soon as everything calmed down, they rushed out of the car. One of the young women, holding a flashlight, hurried to the side of the fallen figure. Get the first aid kit. Please don't die, please. Jane looked at the blonde, muscular man on the ground and called out urgently. Hearing the voices, Thor opened his eyes and saw a woman, looking confused. Seeing that he seemed fine, Jane relaxed but then looked puzzled as she turned to her companions. Where did he come from? She looked around the desolate area, finding it odd for a man to appear suddenly. "Are you okay?" Jane asked. Thor ignored her, shakily getting to his feet, calling out, "Hammer, hammer." He tried to summon Mjolnir, but it didn't respond. Darcy shrugged, muttering, "Looks like he's drunk." While the three of them talked, Thor looked up and called out, "Heimdall, I know you can hear me. Open the Bifrost." Seeing his calls were in vain, Thor turned to Jane. What realm is this?" "Elfheim." Seeing his crazed behavior, Darcy aimed a taser at him. Thor looked disdainful. "Do you dare threaten me, Thor? With such a small weapon?" Before he could finish, the taser hit him. Crackling with electricity, Thor collapsed. Jane and her companions looked at Darcy, mouths agape. Darcy hurriedly explained, "He was scaring me." Jane and the others sighed, dragging the unconscious Thor into the back of the car, preparing to take him to a hospital. As the car roared away, another dazzling light appeared not long after, crashing to the ground and creating a large crater. Looking inside, one could see flickering electricity, surrounding a silver hammer, Mjolnir. As the electricity dissipated, Mjolnir returned to its original form, looking like an ordinary hammer. Less than half an hour later, a figure with glowing red hands slowly flew closer. "So this is Mjolnir." Syd watched the hammer in the crater in amazement. While Syd observed Mjolnir, in Asgard, on the Bifrost bridge platform, a man in golden armor, holding a golden sword, with golden eyes, seemed to notice the disturbance. End of chapter. Chapter 92. Heimdall, who had been keeping an eye on Thor, noticed the disturbance near Mjolnir and turned his golden eyes toward the hammer's location. Heimdall, who had always favored Thor and held a grudge against Loki, was the guardian of Asgard. His duty was to protect the realm from evil forces. With his astonishing perception, his golden eyes could observe any place and countless beings across the 9 realms. At this moment, he noticed a Midgardian approaching Mjolnir. A sorcerer. Seeing the glowing red hands, Heimdall pondered. He thought this person either accidentally discovered Mjolnir or intended to lift it and gain its power. Shaking his head under his golden helmet, he thought to himself, "Mjolnir is not something just anyone can lift. Those who attempt to do so with impure intentions will only find their efforts in vain." Not only had Heimdall noticed this scene, but Odin, who had just sent Thor to Midgard and was concerned about his son's condition, also sensed someone approaching Mjolnir. Odin, too, did not pay much attention, believing that no Midgardian could lift Mjolnir. Under their watchful eyes, Syd slowly descended to the edge of the crater. Looking at Mjolnir in the pit, he hesitated for a moment before reaching out with his right hand. His fingers touched the handle and gripped it. With a bit of uncertainty, he tried to lift it. To his surprise, Mjolnir felt weightless, rising effortlessly in his hand. Boom! The sky immediately filled with dark clouds, and lightning began to flash. Crash! A thick bolt of lightning struck Mjolnir, then coursed through the hammer into Syd's body. But instead of feeling paralyzed or in pain, Syd felt a surge of comfort, as if his body was suddenly brimming with power. Lightning crackled around him as layers of silver armor formed on his body, transforming into Thor's battle attire. So this is Thor's power. Syd raised Mjolnir high, bolts of lightning descending from the sky, accompanied by a fierce storm. He swung the hammer towards the ground. Boom! A 6 or 7 meter crater appeared. Whoosh tilde. Syd held Mjolnir by its leather handle and spun it like a fan. "It's pretty easy to use. Is that it?" Lightning crackled around him, making him look like the god of thunder. While Syd was feeling the ease of wielding Mjolnir, Heimdall and Odin, who were observing, were stunned. A Midgardian lifted Mjolnir. Clang! Heimdall's golden sword fell to the ground. His stern and silent face couldn't hide his shock, and his eyes widened, his mouth agape. He wondered if he was seeing things. How could a Midgardian lift Mjolnir and gain Thor's power? How was this possible? This was a spell cast by Odin. Moreover, if someone else had lifted Mjolnir, what would happen to Thor? Meanwhile, Odin, who had also noticed Mjolnir being lifted, was both shocked and puzzled. He instinctively tightened his grip on his eternal spear. His gaze grew sharp as he stared intently at the lightning-encased figure. Like Heimdall, Odin wondered what would happen to Thor if someone else gained Mjolnir's power. His mind was in turmoil, considering whether he should intervene. What happened? Next to him, Frigga, the queen of Asgard, was startled by Odin's expression and asked urgently. Hearing her, Odin said, "Thor is in trouble." Frigga looked even more confused. Seeing her bewilderment, Odin explained, "A Midgardian lifted Mjolnir before Thor did." A Midgardian? Frigga was equally shocked, her face showing anxiety as she was about to say something. Odin sighed and said, "Let's see how things unfold. It's time for Thor to learn a lesson and curb his arrogance." Though still anxious, Frigga could only accept reality after hearing Odin's words and silently prayed. While they were in shock and confusion, Syd, who had been experiencing Thor's power in the crater, suddenly frowned. At first, he felt immense power when Mjolnir's energy entered his body. However, this power only lasted for a short time before he felt his body subtly rejecting the thunderous energy. It was like an overpowering guest invading his body, making the weaker host struggle to cope. The longer he maintained the Thor state, the more uncomfortable he felt. In an instant, Syd guessed what was happening. It was likely that the nascent divine power from his god of light abilities was rejecting the powerful thunderous energy. But this divine power was too weak to resist effectively. Syd realized that with Mjolnir's thunderous energy filling his body, the nascent divine power would struggle to grow. Helpless, he temporarily cancelled the Thor state. The crackling lightning gradually dissipated, and silence returned to the surroundings. As the thunderous energy receded, his body briefly glowed with golden light before it quickly faded. In Asgard. What was that? Heimdall, who had been closely watching the Midgardian who lifted Mjolnir, noticed the fleeting golden light, his face showing confusion. For some reason, he felt the golden light carried a familiar aura, but it vanished before he could investigate further, leaving him with a headache. Odin, sitting on his throne, also sensed the fleeting golden light. Shaking his head, Odin thought he must have been seeing things. It was normal to misinterpret such a brief sensation. After all, how could a Midgardian? In the dark night. Looking at Mjolnir in his hand, Syd felt a sense of ambivalence. It was like having something that he didn't particularly enjoy but couldn't throw away either. He didn't want to discard it, but keeping it hindered his growth. After pondering for a while, Syd thought, "I'll keep it for now. Let's see what happens when Thor summons it back." Of course, he didn't plan to sit idly by. It had been a long time since something interesting happened, so he might as well mess with Thor. With this in mind, Syd swung Mjolnir, then hurled it forward, instantly making it heavier. With a swoosh, the centrifugal force carried him forward. In a flash, his figure disappeared from sight, creating a sonic boom. End of chapter.
Chapter 93. As he felt the intense wind blowing against him, Syd realized he had underestimated the force of his flight. If not for his second-level god body, which significantly increased his body density and defense, an ordinary person would have been in serious trouble by now. Observing Syd's flight, Heimdall and Odin's faces took on peculiar expressions. "This kid, why does he seem so familiar? Watching him fly, I almost thought I was seeing Thor," Odin mused. "A Midgardian, able to wield Mjolnir so effortlessly?" Odin was puzzled. In their watchful gaze, Syd flew towards the location where Thor had been. After several changes in direction, Syd finally found the car that had taken Thor to the hospital. He saw Jane Foster, Darcy Lewis, and Eric Selvig rush Thor inside. Not long after, Jane and Darcy appeared at the front desk, answering questions about Thor from the hospital staff. "I've never seen him before." While they provided information, Thor awoke in the hospital room. As he opened his eyes, he saw a middle-aged doctor with blonde hair. "Hey, let's draw some blood." The doctor moved to take action. Thor, furious, roared, "How dare you attack the son of Odin?" He began to struggle, trying to get off the bed. "Someone help me," the doctor shouted, calling for help. Several people came over, but Thor pushed them away. "Call security." Security to emergency room 3. Before long, a group of burly security guards subdued Thor, who continued to shout, "You are no match for a god." Eventually, after being given a sedative, Thor collapsed. "This guy is crazy. I bet he's on something," a doctor muttered. The next afternoon, after some chaos, Thor finally understood his situation and accepted reality. He found himself in a diner with Jane and her team, eating food. "How did you get into the clouds?" How can you eat a whole box of Pop-Tarts and still be hungry? Thor, eating and drinking, praised. I like this drink. Pretty good, huh? Darcy smiled. Another. Thor suddenly smashed his cup on the ground, indicating he wanted more. Startled, Jane and the others quickly apologized to the diner owner. After cleaning up, Jane couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? This drink is delicious. I want more." Thor, oblivious to his actions, didn't see anything wrong with smashing the cup. "You have to say it." "I did. Say it properly, don't break things. Don't do that next time." While they talked, major changes were happening in Asgard. In the royal treasury, Loki was cautiously walking. Eyeing the blue treasure on a pedestal, the casket of ancient winters, a prized artifact of the frost giants, Loki hesitated. Not long ago, during the battle in Jotunheim, he was accidentally struck by a frost giant, but instead of being hurt, the affected area of his skin turned blue, just like the frost giants. As the god of mischief, he immediately suspected his true identity, wondering if he was a frost giant. He came to the treasury to find the casket and verify his suspicions. Just as he picked it up, a stern voice rang out, "Put it down." Without turning, Loki recognized the voice as his father's, Odin. After a moment of silence, Loki asked, "Am I cursed?" "No. What am I?" "You are my son," Odin replied. At this, Loki put down the casket and slowly turned around. The influence of the casket had turned his skin blue, revealing his frost giant form. "And what else?" Loki's voice held a hint of despair. He walked slowly towards Odin, sadness, despair, and anger in his steps. "That day, you didn't just bring back the casket from Jotunheim, did you?" Wearing yellow robes and sporting a full beard, Odin remained silent for a moment before speaking. "After the war, I went to the temple and found a baby." As he spoke, the surrounding scenery seemed to shift to a distant past. As a child of giants, he was so small, abandoned there, suffering, waiting to die. Finally, Odin revealed Loki's true identity, Laufey's son. The son of Laufey, the frost giant king? Loki's eyes reddened as he confirmed this, but hearing no denial, he felt his world collapsing. "Why?" Loki panted. "Why save me after the massacre at Jotunheim? You were an innocent child." Odin replied. But Loki didn't believe it, angrily retorting, "No, you must have had another reason. What is it?" After a moment of silence, Loki shouted, "Tell me." Odin had no choice but to explain. "I thought our two kingdoms could one day unite, bringing peace through you, forming a lasting alliance." This was what Odin had always meant when he told both Loki and Thor they were born to be kings. He had hoped Loki would become the king of Jotunheim and Thor the king of Asgard, forging an everlasting bond. But those plans are useless now. Eventually, Odin had genuinely come to see Loki as his son. However, Loki didn't listen. His face contorted in pain and anger, refusing to accept this. Recalling Odin's favoritism towards Thor, Loki grew more heartbroken and furious. "So, I was just a stolen relic? Kept until you could use me?" he accused. "Why do you twist my words?" Odin tried to explain. But Loki continued, "You could have told me from the beginning who I was. Now everything is clear. That's why you've always favored Thor. No matter how much you claim to love me, you would never let a frost giant sit on the throne of Asgard." As Loki stepped closer, Odin, feeling unwell, sat down, opening his mouth to say something. But before he could finish, he fell into the Odin sleep. This was when a god's power became so great that the body couldn't handle it, requiring a period of deep sleep to adjust the divine power. As Asgardians age, their divine power increases. Odin's power was so immense that he needed to undergo the Odin sleep periodically to adjust his strength. Just now, his emotional turmoil had forced him into the Odin sleep. Even in this state, he could still sense his surroundings, even perceiving events on Earth. Loki, startled, called out for help. "Guards! Guards, come quickly!" Soon, the doors to the treasury were flung open, and 2 armored guards rushed in. On Earth. After eating, Thor left the diner, with Jane and her team following. "Where are you going?" Jane asked, puzzled. "I need to retrieve my belongings," Thor said. Jane and the others were confused. "What belongings? Did you leave something at the place we were before?" Thor nodded. "Yes, I need to find my hammer." "Hammer again?" Jane and the others exchanged looks, almost thinking this guy was still not right in the head. "What hammer?" Jane asked hesitantly. Thor, walking ahead, replied honestly, "Mjolnir, my hammer of thunder." "Mjolnir? The hammer of thunder?" Jane and her team exchanged looks, truly believing Thor was delusional. Before they could question further, A voice called out from not far away. Are you looking for this? Thor and the others turned to see a mysterious figure dressed in white standing at a street corner, holding a silver hammer. Syd swung Mjolnir, watching Thor with interest. My Mjolnir! Thor's eyes lit up with joy, then he hesitated. How is it with you? Who are you? Mjolnir, the hammer of thunder? Jane and the others were astonished, their eyes fixed on the hammer with curiosity. No matter how they looked at it, it seemed like an ordinary hammer. But this was called the Hammer of Thunder? Jane and her team, feeling incredulous, stared at both men. Who am I? Syd, hearing Thor's question, decided to have some fun and said slowly, I am Thor. With a boom, the sky darkened, and a thick bolt of lightning struck down. Syd held Mjolnir, and a dazzling suit of armor appeared on his body. Watching the lightning-encased figure, Jane and the others, who had thought both men were crazy, were stunned. Oh no, this can't be. Thor's eyes widened, his hands clumsy, his face full of panic. Mjolnir. He stretched out his hand, trying to summon the hammer. But no matter how he called, Mjolnir didn't budge, staying firmly in Syd's hand. The white-clad figure, surrounded by a powerful aura, looked like the real god of thunder. Thor's face turned pale, looking as if he had been abandoned, pitiful and dejected. Syd. Seriously, does he have to look so defeated? Jane and the others, looking back and forth between the two, were thoroughly shocked. Are they not crazy? With all this thunder and lightning, is that really the Hammer of Thunder? So, their identities are? Thinking about it, Jane and her team felt a growing sense of awe. End of chapter. Chapter 94. Could it be that there really are gods in this world? If so, then these two individuals. Could they both be gods? Jane Foster, Darcy Lewis, and Eric Selvig looked skeptically at Thor. Just recently, he had been eating and drinking with them, seemingly an ordinary person. Gods wouldn't be this weak, would they? In contrast, the man in white looked more like a god. My Mjolnir. Thor stared blankly at the hammer in the white-clad man's hand before turning his gaze to the man, slightly pleading, please give it back to me. Hearing this, Syd pondered for a moment and then casually said, you can try. With that, he threw Mjolnir to the ground with a thud. As Mjolnir left his hand, the armor on Syd's body reverted to its original state. Seeing Thor's eyes light up with excitement as he approached to grasp Mjolnir, Syd said, only the true god of thunder can lift it. Thor didn't pay much attention to the remark. If he wasn't the god of thunder, who was? With confidence, he bent down and grasped Mjolnir, fully expecting to lift it. Jane and her companions watched with anticipation. However, contrary to their expectations and Thor's own, no matter how hard he tried, Mjolnir remained immobile, as if it were welded to the ground. This seemed to defy the laws of physics. Watching Thor exert all his strength to no avail, Jane and her companions were astonished. No, this can't be. Thor exclaimed, stepping back several times, unwilling to accept reality. As he retreated, Syd raised his right hand, and Mjolnir, as if summoned, flew back into his grasp with a whoosh. Seeing this, Thor felt even more devastated, as if his world had crumbled. Midgardian, what have you done? Why does Mjolnir not respond to me but to you? Thor couldn't believe Mjolnir would ignore him. He was convinced the Midgardian must have done something to prevent the hammer from recognizing his call. However, the Midgardian's response left him stunned. Have you forgotten that you are now just a mortal? Syd said. With those words, Thor's mind seemed to explode. He suddenly remembered and understood why Mjolnir no longer responded to him. He sat down on the ground, dazed. Yet, as he sat there, he thought of something else. If even he couldn't lift the hammer, how could this Midgardian do it? A rare moment of clarity struck Thor's mind, and a question arose. Midgardian, how do you know so much about Asgard and what has happened to me? Who exactly are you? Thor stared at the white-clad figure, filled with confusion. Syd shook his head, as if making a prophecy, and said, you should think about how to deal with Loki's pursuit. With that, he turned and began to leave. Loki. Pursuit. Thor was taken aback, then smiled, finding it amusing. What is this Midgardian talking about? Loki pursuing me? Ridiculous. Thor thought it was laughable. The Midgardian's previous statements must have been lies. As he pondered, The Midgardian's voice rang out again from a distance. "Oh, by the way, your friends, the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif, will come down from Asgard to find you soon. Perhaps you'll all die together." The final words echoed as the white-clad figure disappeared down the street. Thor was stunned, utterly disbelieving. When he came to his senses, the man was already gone. The next second, Thor felt regret. My Mjolnir. While Thor regretted not stopping the white-clad man, in Asgard, Heimdall, standing on the Bifrost platform, had witnessed everything. He had heard the Midgardian's words, which left him stunned. He had been planning to gather the Warriors 3 and Sif. After Odin fell into the Odin sleep, Loki had assumed the throne and personally warned Heimdall not to open the Bifrost without his permission. Heimdall knew Loki's intentions well. When he sensed the Warriors 3's plans to defy Loki and find Thor, he had planned to call them for a talk. His true intention was to leave the Bifrost's key, the golden sword, with them after the talk. Heimdall believed they would understand and use the opportunity to open the Bifrost, allowing him to technically comply with the king's orders while helping Thor. So, when he heard the Midgardian's words, he was dumbfounded. If everything went as planned, the Warriors 3 and Sif would indeed go to Midgard to find Thor. Is this a prophecy? Thinking of prophecies, Heimdall was in disbelief. Even Odin had to sacrifice an eye for limited prophetic power, which wasn't always clear or specific. This Midgardian possessed such power? Prophecy was a significant force in any pantheon. Zeus in Greek mythology both feared and coveted Prometheus' prophetic power. Though fate was hard to change, knowing a prophecy provided a chance to attempt altering it. Heimdall, thinking deeply, felt a bit downcast. Though fate was hard to alter, prophecy remained a vital force, giving a chance to change the future. Watching the Midgardian, Heimdall's golden eyes grew solemn. If everything the Midgardian said came true, it would prove he had at least partial prophetic power. End of chapter. Chapter 95. In a palace some distance away, the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif were also growing increasingly anxious. Thor had been banished, King Odin had fallen into the Odin sleep, and Loki had taken power, forbidding them from seeking out Thor. This made them even more desperate. Compared to Loki, they believed Thor was more suited to be king, the true king of Asgard. Moreover, Asgard might soon face war. The incident with the frost giants in Jotunheim had angered them, and there were signs they might initiate conflict. Loki, eager to prove himself a better king than Thor, was already devising plans to deal with the frost giants definitively, aiming to demonstrate to Odin that only he, Loki, was fit to rule Asgard. In the palace, Fandral, one of the Warriors 3, paced anxiously, while Volstagg indulged in food and drink, and the others remained silent, lost in thought. After some time, as they discussed going to find Thor, a guard entered the hall. "Heimdall needs to see you." As the guard left, Fandral and the others felt a surge of apprehension. Heimdall wouldn't have overheard them planning to defy Loki and seek out Thor, would he? Despite their trepidation, the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif had no choice but to go. A short while later, in the Bifrost Bridge chamber, Heimdall awaited them. As soon as they arrived, he began his questioning. "Do you intend to defy Loki, our king? To commit treason in rescuing Thor?" The room fell silent. Lady Sif stepped forward. "Yes." "Good," Heimdall replied, nodding before turning to leave, seemingly outraged. "Will you help us?" Sif asked urgently. As he walked away, Heimdall responded, "I serve the kingdom and cannot open the bridge for you." With that, he left the chamber. As he departed, Fandral asked, "Isn't he difficult to deal with?" They contemplated whether they could overpower Heimdall and force him to open the Bifrost. However, as the guardian of Asgard's gates, Heimdall's combat prowess was formidable, and even together, they weren't confident of victory. "What should we do?" Volstagg asked, his large frame slumping in frustration. Suddenly, Sif nudged Fandral and pointed behind him. They turned to see a golden sword embedded in the chamber center, the key to the Bifrost Bridge. Sparks of white energy danced along the blade, indicating the bridge had been activated. The four exchanged a look of joy and relief before stepping into the light and vanishing. In the palace, Loki sensed the Bifrost's activation and made his way to Asgard's treasure vault. Using the royal scepter, Gungnir, he unleashed the destroyer armor, a fearsome sentinel capable of autonomously seeking and eliminating threats, far more formidable than any sentinel robots. "Don't let my brother return," Loki commanded the destroyer, ensuring its obedience. He then prepared to travel to Midgard himself, having intended to go earlier but delayed by the frost giant's issues. He wanted to see Thor and Mjolnir for himself. He remembered Odin's enchantment, believing that if he could lift Mjolnir, it would prove his worthiness. Meanwhile, on Earth, a massive beam of light from the Bifrost illuminated the sky, depositing the warriors 3 and Lady Sif. They set off toward Thor's location, attracting the attention of curious onlookers. "Is this a Renaissance fair? Mom, those people look strange." Their armored and armed appearance drew stares and comments, but they paid no mind, focused on their mission. In a nearby shop, Thor, still reeling from Mjolnir's rejection, heard a knock at the glass door. He turned to see 4 armored figures. Volstag's booming voice announced, "We found you." They burst through the door, embracing Thor warmly. Jane and her friends watched in amazement. Thor introduced his friends. "These are my companions." He turned to the warriors 3, excitement in his voice. "I'm so glad to see you." But then, his expression darkened. "You shouldn't have come." "Why not?" Sif demanded. "Do you know how hard it was for us to get here? Why don't you want to come back with us?" The warriors 3 and Sif looked at him in confusion. Thor hesitated before explaining. "I'm no longer the god of thunder. Father stripped me of my powers, and Mjolnir." His voice faltered. "It rejected me, choosing a Midgardian as its master." His friends were stunned, unable to believe what they were hearing. "Mjolnir chose a Midgardian?" Fandral exclaimed. "How is that possible? Who is this person?" The questions came rapidly, their disbelief evident. Thor, remembering the words of the white-clad figure, told them, before he left, "He said you would come for me." The revelation left them speechless. A Midgardian knowing their plans? "And he said Loki would try to kill me," Thor added. The warriors 3 and Sif exchanged uneasy glances, considering the possibility. Loki, hidden nearby and listening, felt a chill. A Midgardian predicting his actions? He resolved to find this person, needing to understand how they knew so much about Asgard and his intentions. In disbelief, he muttered, "Midgardian, who are you?" Whether for Mjolnir or the prophecies, Loki knew he had to meet this enigmatic figure. End of chapter.
Chapter 96. At this moment. "Look over there," Jane suddenly exclaimed, pointing outside. Everyone turned to see the sky in the distance forming a swirling vortex. With a thunderous crash, it seemed as though something had descended. "Is anyone else coming here?" Jane asked in confusion. Sif and her companions exchanged glances and hurriedly ran out of the building, looking towards the vortex. They saw a huge, dark, menacing ironclad figure walking slowly across the open field. Thor and the others recognized it immediately. It was none other than the destroyer armor, specially created by King Odin to combat the Celestials. "Hey, guys, he was right," Volstagg exclaimed in shock. There was no need to think. Currently, the only one in Asgard who could control the destroyer armor was Loki. And the purpose of the destroyer armor appearing here was clear. 2 prophecies, and both came true. A Midgardian? If this isn't a coincidence. Thor and his companions exchanged glances, their emotions indescribable. The person who predicted this seemed more mysterious to them than ever, making both the Asgardians and the science-believing Dr. Jane Foster and her team feel a sense of awe. Their worldview was being reshaped. Meanwhile, the destroyer armor was moving towards Thor and his companions, destroying everything in its path. Boom! A yellow energy beam shot from its head, causing violent explosions wherever it hit, be it vehicles or buildings. Flames spread across the street, turning everything in sight into ruins. Seeing this devastation, Thor and the others looked grim. "Jane, you must leave here," Thor said seriously. "What about you?" Jane asked in astonishment. "I'm staying," Thor replied. Volstagg, the bearded warrior, quickly said, "Thor, fight with us." Thor walked to Fandral and the others, saying, "My friends, I am merely a mortal now. I might only hinder you and get you killed." After thinking for a moment, he added, "But I can help these people get to safety." He pointed to the bystanders who hadn't yet realized what was happening. Quickly, they began to disperse the clueless crowd. Inside a restaurant. Danger is approaching, everyone get out, run, you can eat later. Boom. While Thor and the others were dispersing the crowd, the destroyer armor continued to blow up vehicles and houses. Valkyrie, Sif and the Warriors 3 moved towards the center of the street, ready to buy Thor and the others some time. Let's distract it, Sif said. With that, she hid quietly. Fandral and the others exchanged glances. Volstagg took a running start and, with the help of Fandral and Hogun, leaped towards the destroyer armor. For Asgard. Volstagg raised his axe high in the air, ready to strike the black, menacing destroyer armor. But before he could land his blow, the destroyer armor punched him away. Bang! He crashed heavily into a car, denting it. The destroyer armor slowly approached the weakened Volstagg, glowing yellow, ready to fire an energy beam to finish him off. At that moment, Valkyrie Sif leaped from the rooftop above, aiming her spear at the destroyer armor's neck. With a swift motion, her spear pierced through the destroyer armor's neck. The destroyer powered down. However, just as Volstagg breathed a sigh of relief and Sif looked proud, the destroyer armor lit up again. A sound of twisting metal filled the air. Its body contorted and twisted, quickly turning to face Sif. Seeing it about to fire another beam, Sif released her grip and fell to the ground in fear. Retreat! Terrified by the formidable enemy, Valkyrie Sif shouted and started to run. Volstagg and the others began to retreat as well. Behind them, the destroyer armor's energy beams continued to chase them, causing a series of explosions along the way. Boom! An energy beam hit the ground near them, sending dirt flying like a powerful grenade, its massive impact blowing them away. Run! Thor called out to Jane and the others still there. Seeing them leave, Thor quickly ran over to the severely injured Sif. Noticing she was trying to get up, Thor held her shoulder and said, "Sif, you've done your best." He didn't want Sif and the others to keep risking their lives. However, Sif shook her head, looking at Thor, unwilling to abandon him. She said solemnly, "No, I want to die like a warrior." Today's story will be told and retold. Seeing her determination, Thor persuaded, "Live on, tell the story to the children yourself." Reluctantly, Sif agreed. Just as she left, an energy beam shot over, blowing up a car. Thor quickly dropped to the ground. He got up swiftly and ran to Fandral and the others. He spoke to the Warriors 3 as if delivering his last words, "You must return to Asgard and stop Loki." Fandral looked at him in surprise and asked, "What about you?" Thor forced a smile and said, "Don't worry, my friends. I have a plan." With those words, Fandral and Hogun took the heavily injured Volstagg and fled. Watching them disappear, Thor's cheerful expression faded. He surveyed the burning streets and the destroyer armor still wreaking havoc in the distance. Thor understood something. He knew that no one here could defeat the destroyer armor, including Sif and the others. And if he didn't stay, the destroyer armor would continue to harm others. Not wanting Sif and the others to die, as Volstagg and the others fled, Thor instead walked step by step towards the destroyer armor. From a distance, Jane and the others occasionally glanced at him, stunned. "What is he doing?" Jane murmured. Noticing Thor approaching, the destroyer armor, controlled by Loki, temporarily ceased its attacks and watched him. Thor walked, speaking sadly, "Brother, no matter how I offended you, or whatever I did to make you hate me so much, I truly ask for your forgiveness. These people are innocent. Killing them does you no good." As he got closer, the destroyer armor began to glow yellow, its head opening as if ready to fire an energy beam. Seeing this, Thor murmured, "Kill me, end this." End of chapter. Chapter 97. Hearing Thor's plea, the destroyer armor hesitated, halting its attack. It seemed Loki was conflicted. Seeing this, Thor's face lit up with a hopeful smile. However, as if provoked by his smile, the destroyer armor turned back and delivered a heavy punch to Thor's face. Ooah! Thor was sent flying. In the distance, Jane and the others were horrified. "No." Jane ran over and cradled the severely injured Thor. "It's all over," Thor said weakly. "It's not over yet." Jane shook her head. Thor forced a smile. At least you are safe. It's all over. As he spoke, his eyes closed, seemingly passing out. The destroyer armor slowly turned away. Jane and the others were visibly saddened. In the distance, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, who had come to investigate, were shocked as they recorded the events unfolding. In Asgard, Odin, who was in the Odin's Leap, seemed to sense all of this, and a tear rolled down his closed eyes. Just when everyone thought it was all over, a figure enveloped in electricity emerged from the corner of the street. Who is he? Sif and the other Asgardians were stunned. Jane, in a daze, murmured, "It's him, the one who lifted Mjolnir." Hearing her, Sif and the others looked at his right hand, where he was holding a silver hammer, indeed Mjolnir. From the lightning surrounding him, it was clear he had been recognized by Mjolnir, not using any trickery. The Valkyrie and the Warriors 3 were astonished, finding it incredible. Why would Mjolnir acknowledge a Midgardian? And looking at his demeanor, he seemed more like Thor than Thor himself. Could Thor have been right? Especially since he had twice predicted events concerning Asgard, shrouding him in mystery. Who is he? In the distance, Loki, watching the scene, was equally puzzled. A Midgardian? How? S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in the distance immediately recognized who he was. That's the fugitive. It was clear they knew him. What's he doing here? And that hammer in his hand? As they were stunned, Syd shook his head, letting go of the eager Mjolnir. With a swoosh, the hammer flew to the unconscious Thor's hand. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and a bolt of lightning struck Thor. Layers of silver armor covered Thor's body, and he awoke, his powers restored amidst the flashing electricity. At the same time, the power of Mjolnir disappeared from Syd, causing the latent divine power within him to surge back. In an instant, he was enveloped in a golden glow. The Valkyrie and the others, initially focused on Thor, were stunned, turning their gaze to the mysterious figure in white. Is that divine power? Sif and the other Asgardians, including the now smiling Thor and Loki, were all dumbfounded. They wondered if they had sensed wrong. How could they detect divine power from a Midgardian? Although it was only in its nascent form and not fully awakened, it was still divine power, the power of a god. Moreover, they felt this divine power was familiar, seemingly belonging to Asgard, possibly even royal. Typically, only the Odin lineage possessed this power. In Odin, it was called the Odin Force. In Thor, it was the power of Thor, though Thor had not fully awakened and was still just the god of hammers. The golden glow didn't last long and quickly faded, but Sif and the others were still in shock. Not only them, but Heimdall, frozen as punishment for letting people pass the Bifrost unauthorized, also witnessed everything. His golden eyes flashed with astonishment. In the Odin's Leap chamber, Odin sensed it too, his mind echoing one thought. Impossible. On Earth. How is it possible? Sif and the others doubted their senses. How could they detect divine power from this figure in white? Who is he? This question deeply rooted itself in their minds. Jane and the others, not understanding, saw their stunned expressions and asked, "What's wrong?" Sif replied, "We sense divine power from this man in white." Jane and the others were shocked. "You mean, he's also a god?" They were astonished. While they were in shock, the destroyer armor began to glow yellow, its head opening, seemingly preparing to fire an energy beam. Judging by its aim, it was targeting the man in white. No. Thor and the others were alarmed. This was the destroyer armor's energy beam. Whether Midgardian or Asgardian, being hit meant certain death. There's no time to stop it. We're doomed. Fandral and the others seemed to see the man in white being hit by the energy beam and turning to ashes. Thor, Heimdall, and Odin instinctively tensed, wanting to prevent this but unable to do anything, forced to watch the impending tragedy. Boom. In the next instant, a massive yellow energy beam shot towards the man in white. It's over. But just when they thought it was over, Syd Castell's right hand moved slightly, red light flashing, and a red shield appeared in front of him. Chaos Magic Experience +1. In the next second, the destroyer armor's energy beam collided with the Chaos Magic shield. Boom. A violent explosion ensued, flames and hot winds engulfing everything. The strange red shield blocked the destroyer armor's energy beam. The energy beam kept firing, with residual energy spreading around the red shield, creating a scene of destruction. Syd frowned. If not for the chaos magic counteracting the impact, he might have been blown away by the energy beam. Even so, he was struggling to withstand the destroyer armor's energy beam. The destroyer armor was indeed formidable, more challenging than the Sentinel robots. With this thought, he flicked his hands, red light flashing as he used chaos magic to attack the destroyer armor. In Jane, Thor, and the others' eyes, the man in white used a strange red shield to block the energy beam. Thor and the others were shocked. Then, they saw the man in white move his right hand, causing the destroyer armor to lose control and fly into a nearby building. Boom! The building was left with a huge crater. Watching the man in white seemingly effortlessly gain the upper hand, Sif and the others were dumbfounded. This was the destroyer armor. Previously, it had made them, Asgardians, struggle and retreat. Now, it was being held off by one person and even knocked back. It was unbelievable. As the destroyer armor stood up from the rubble, unharmed, Syd Castell's frown deepened, red light flashing as he gathered chaos magic energy. Chaos magic experience +1. He flicked his hand, sending chaos magic energy balls at the destroyer armor. Boom, boom, boom. Sif and the others watched in awe as the energy balls bombarded the destroyer armor, making it stagger. The destroyer armor was completely suppressed. While they were in shock, Syd Castell realized that chaos magic was ineffective against it. Despite suppressing it momentarily, it barely caused any damage. What kind of material is this? So durable? Not only was the material hard, but it also had magic immunity, reducing the effectiveness of chaos magic. Syd Castell felt that his current chaos magic was too weak. Maybe at level 5, it would be different, but at level 4, it wasn't enough. His right hand glowed red, extending the light to the destroyer armor. He exerted his power, holding it in place for a moment, then glanced at Thor. Snapping out of his shock, Thor spun Mjolnir and took to the sky. In an instant, lightning filled the sky.
Thor spun Mjolnir, forming a massive tornado. Finally, he leaped down, wielding Mjolnir. Boom! Mjolnir struck the destroyer armor's head with immense speed. Bang! A blinding light covered everything. Then, the residual energy from the destroyer armor's destruction spread. Buildings collapsed, and windows shattered. Luckily, Sif and the others had taken Jane and the others to safety in time, avoiding serious injury. However, the shield agents in the distance, in their shock, didn't react in time and were blown away by the energy wave. They soon lay on the ground, unable to move. Syd frowned, using chaos magic to shield himself. As the smoke cleared, he glanced at the nearly destroyed destroyer armor and shook his head. Loki and Thor had wasted such a divine artifact. Despite its recent performance, the destroyer armor was created by Odin to fight the Celestials, beings capable of destroying stars. The destroyer armor needed to be worn to maximize its power, not used like a robot. Syd sighed at Asgardian's wastefulness. At this moment, Thor, having dealt with the destroyer armor, strode over. Standing beside him, Thor stared at him, shocked, and asked, "Asgardian power? Who are you?" End of chapter. Chapter 98. Are you from Asgard? Thor asked incredulously. Facing his inquiry, Syd glanced at him and replied casually, "You're overthinking it." However, neither Thor nor Sif and the others believed him. Even Loki, hiding in the shadows, as well as Heimdall and Odin from Asgard, doubted his words. They all felt that this mysterious man in white must have a deep connection with Asgard. His current claims seemed like a cover. After all, the evidence had been right before their eyes. Noticing the curious, puzzled, and inquisitive looks on their faces, Syd's lips twitched slightly. Then, he lost interest in dealing with them. After one last glance at Thor holding Mjolnir, feeling a bit regretful, he prepared to leave. Seeing his movements, Thor quickly chased after him, persistently saying, "You can't be a mere Midgardian. You must be from Asgard. Tell me your true identity. What kind of god are you?" Suddenly, he speculated, "Could it be, you're my father's illegitimate child?" His casual remark caused Sif and the others to exchange glances, filled with suspicion and uncertainty. Maybe, perhaps, It's possible. Otherwise, how could they explain the divine power emanating from this man in white? They hesitated in their thoughts. In the shadows, Loki's eyes widened, and his gaze turned sharply toward Syd, filled with complex emotions. In Asgard, even though Heimdall was still frozen, hearing this statement made him shiver inwardly. He felt a bit dazed. This explanation made sense. Even Odin, in his Odin sleep, couldn't help but have a moment of doubt upon hearing Thor's words, despite knowing it was impossible. This man in white did seem somewhat. Odin's mind was filled with uncertainty. On Earth, hearing Thor's increasingly outlandish speculations, Syd was speechless. Shaking his head, he let his hands glow red, lifted off the ground, and quickly flew away. Who exactly are you? Watching him fly away, Thor's curiosity deepened. If it weren't for Sif and the others and the pressing matters at hand, he might have chased after him. He swore to uncover this man's identity later. Thor, are you just going to let him go? This man in white seems to be connected to Asgard and might even have the gift of prophecy. Sif said doubtfully. There will be another chance. Thor replied, looking at them. As they talked, Loki, hidden in the shadows, had already slipped away quietly. He returned to Asgard and, following his plan, used the Eternal Spear, the symbol of the king's authority, to open the Bifrost, allowing the frost giants into Asgard. Welcome to Asgard, Loki said. Laufey, the leader of the frost giants, with his dark blue skin and red eyes, looked satisfied. They then headed to Odin's chamber, planning to help Loki kill Odin as per their agreement. However, things didn't go as planned. When Loki reached Odin's chamber, after repelling the guards and Frigga, he spoke triumphantly to the sleeping Odin. It said you can hear and see everything while in the Odin sleep. I hope that's true. Laufey, with a smug expression, formed an ice blade in his right hand. So you'll know it was I, Laufey, who killed you. Just as he was about to strike Odin, a beam of light shot from behind him. It was the sound of Odin's artifact, the Eternal Spear. With a sizzling noise, Laufey screamed as the yellow beam hit him, sending him flying and leaving him severely injured and unable to move. And the one who kills you is Odin's son. Loki, clad in armor, said coldly as he looked at the fallen Laufey. He then mercilessly raised the Eternal Spear again. Laufey looked at him in disbelief. Before Laufey could reveal the truth, Loki began his cover-up. A yellow beam shot from the Eternal Spear, hitting Laufey. In an instant, Laufey's superhuman body turned into particles of light and scattered, completely disintegrating. Seeing this, Frigga, who had been knocked down nearby, got up in relief. Loki, you saved your father. She walked over and embraced Loki excitedly. As they shared this moment, Heimdall, summoned by Thor, broke free from his icy prison and activated the Bifrost, transporting Thor and his companions back to Asgard. Thor arrived just in time to witness the recent events. At this moment, I swear to you, Mother, I will make them pay for today's deeds. Loki vowed. Seeing this, Thor stepped forward and called out, Loki. Frigga was delighted. Thor, I knew you'd return. After hugging her, Thor walked towards Loki. Why don't you tell Mother how you sent the destroyer to kill me and my friends? What? Frigga was shocked. I was only carrying out Father's last command. Loki retreated step by step. Thor, in disbelief, said, You really are a master of lies. Loki, a bit panicked, tried to stay calm. It's good that you're back. Excuse me, I need to destroy Jotunheim. With that, he used the Eternal Spear to knock Thor out of the hall. As Thor fell, Loki hurried to the Bifrost control room. Using the Eternal Spear, he activated the Bifrost, sending a massive energy beam towards Jotunheim, the land of the frost giants. Under the immense power of the Bifrost, Jotunheim's ground began to collapse, causing panic and chaos among the frost giants. Shortly after activating the Bifrost, Thor rushed in. It's too late to stop it. The Bifrost will split Jotunheim in two, Loki said grimly. Thor tried to intervene but was easily knocked away by the Eternal Spear. Why are you doing this? Thor demanded. Loki spread his arms, like a child seeking approval. I want to prove to Father that I am worthy of being his son. When he wakes, he will know it was I who saved him, I who exterminated the monstrous race. I am the true heir to the throne. End of chapter. Chapter 99. You can't exterminate an entire race. Thor shouted angrily. Loki, incredulous, replied, Why not? When did you change? Do you forget why father banished you? Back then, you stormed Jotunheim and wanted to wipe them all out. Why have you suddenly become merciful towards the frost giants? Thor was silent for a moment, then said, I've changed. So have I. Loki struck Thor's face with the handle of the eternal spear. Seeing Thor not fighting back, Loki became enraged. Fight back. He hit Thor again, sending him sliding across the ground. Loki's eyes turned red. I never cared about the throne. I just wanted to compete fairly with you. His heart ached as memories of Odin favoring Thor flashed in his mind, filling him with resentment. Why did father choose Thor for the throne and never consider him? He just wanted a fair competition. I don't want to fight you, brother. Thor yelled. Loki, filled with bitterness, retorted, I am not your brother, never have been. Brother, stop this madness. Thor couldn't understand why Loki had changed so drastically. Why was he saying such things out of the blue? Clearly, Thor didn't know the truth about Loki's origins. Seeing Thor's continued refusal to retaliate, Loki's anger grew, tears forming in his eyes. You think I'm mad? Do you? How could a trip to Earth make you so weak? Loki thought of Jane. Is it because of a woman? Fine, after I finish you, I'll go see her myself. With a cold laugh, Loki launched into a fight with Thor. Even though Thor was strong, he couldn't easily handle Loki wielding the eternal spear. Luckily, Thor found an opening. Thor knocked Loki off, causing him to fall over the edge of the Bifrost. Loki clung to the edge, preventing himself from falling. Help me! Loki called out. Thor walked over, kneeling to grab him. But before Thor could touch him, Loki vanished in a puff of illusion. The real Loki appeared behind him, striking him down. Ha ha ha! Multiple illusions of Loki appeared, laughing mockingly at Thor. Enough! Thor roared. A massive lightning bolt struck down, dispersing the illusions and knocking Loki to the ground. Thor placed Mjolnir on Loki's chest, immobilizing him. As the Bifrost continued its destructive charge towards Jotunheim, Loki mocked Thor's helplessness, saying it couldn't be stopped. Unexpectedly, Thor lifted Mjolnir and began destroying the Bifrost. You're mad? Destroying it means you can never return to Earth or see the one you love. Thor ignored him, focusing on destroying the Bifrost. Finally, the Bifrost shattered with a loud explosion, and the massive energy wave sent both of them flying. As they began to fall into the cosmic abyss formed by the destroyed Bifrost, Odin appeared just in time to catch Thor, while Loki clung to Thor. Odin stood on the bridge, with Thor and Loki dangling below, swinging precariously. Seeing Odin, Loki felt a glimmer of hope and triumphantly shouted, I almost succeeded, father. I almost wiped them out for you, for everyone. However, Odin responded, No, Loki. Loki's expression froze, disbelief washing over him, and he slowly let go. Loki, no. Thor shouted. But despite Thor's cries, Loki released his grip, falling into the cosmic abyss, choosing death over living with his despair. Falling into the cosmic abyss meant certain death. No one could survive that. No. Thor screamed in agony. Odin felt regret, no. In the end, Loki was swallowed by the abyss, disappearing without a trace. When he regained consciousness, he found himself face to face with Thanos, who sought to collect the Infinity Stones and invade Earth. On Earth. Although Syd had flown away from the battlefield, the impact of the events lingered. The incident caused a significant stir, with information quickly spreading online and attracting widespread attention. The S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who were injured during the battle were rescued, and the data related to the fight was sent to director Nick Fury. What's the situation, boss? Noticing the shocked expression on Nick Fury's face, S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Coulson asked in confusion. Coulson, do you think there are gods in this world? Fury, dressed in black, asked. Coulson, a middle-aged man, replied, Of course not, that's just ancient myth. Before he could finish, Fury handed him a video, explaining as he did. Watching the video, Coulson's face showed astonishment. Based on the information gathered, these people are likely gods from Norse mythology. That's Thor, and this one is... Fury introduced each figure gravely. Coulson, recovering from his shock, suggested, Boss, is it possible they're just aliens? Looking at them, these so-called gods didn't seem as fearsome as the myth suggested. Fury, with his single eye, glanced at Coulson and said, Regardless of whether they're gods or aliens, their civilization is undoubtedly more advanced than ours. We can't take them lightly. Coulson nodded. Finally, Fury focused intently on a white-clad figure in the video. This guy in white is also suspected to be a god, he said. Coulson asked in surprise, isn't he a mutant? Not sure, we need more information. Fury shook his head, adding, we'll hold off on any plans against him until we know more. Coulson nodded. While S.H.I.E.L.D. paused their plans against Syd Castell, other organizations were preparing to act. At Facility 23. In various cells, prisoners were discussing recent events. What do you think they did with number 35? A black man in a cell called out. In response, voices echoed from nearby cells. If I remember correctly, number 35's mutant ability is pretty ordinary, right? Isn't it something about reducing presence, making people less vigilant? Just then, a well-informed white man laughed. You guys don't know anything. His ability is not that simple. Even though he's just number 35, he's quite a handful for some people, like number 37, who escaped. The prisoners were astonished. What do you mean? End of chapter.
Chapter 100. The burly white man, Brecon, said with a gloating smile, number 35's ability doesn't just reduce his presence, it also makes others lose their sense of danger. To put it plainly, if you encounter him, your danger sense won't work. Brecon, thoughtful, speculated, I guess the base thinks number 37 is so hard to deal with because of his danger sense. They're planning to use number 35's ability to see if they can block number 37's danger sense and then quietly take him out. Hearing his analysis, the prisoner's eyes lit up, all agreeing with his reasoning. If that's true, number 37 is in trouble. Relying too much on danger sense can make one complacent. After discussing this, they moved on to other topics. Hey, I heard there's another powerful mutant recently. Wonder when that person will join us. Soon, I guess. Arrogant ones like that, except for that Messiah, usually get caught eventually. Even the Messiah can't evade capture forever. That's true. The prisoners laughed, eager for new company. In a laboratory some distance away, their guess was spot on. The base indeed planned to use number 35's ability to ambush number 37. After researching number 35's genes, they had made significant progress. In the lab, Dr. Bolivar, how's the research going? Asked Alessandro, the head of Base 23, turning to the short, lab-coated Dr. Bolivar. Almost done. Given the Sentinel robot's characteristics, it should soon have this ability. The challenge lies in the related equipment, Dr. Bolivar replied without looking up from his work. We can hire some assassins, have number 35 lead them to ambush the guy in white. Though he's not as strong as the Messiah, he's still a decent target. Testing this ability on him first will help avoid mishaps when we go after the Messiah. Alessandro nodded in agreement. Indeed, ambushing number 37, the Messiah, required careful planning, but ambushing the recent upstart was no big deal. The target had psychic abilities and might also sense danger, making him a good test subject for number 35's power to ensure no mistakes when dealing with the Messiah. Then Alessandro asked, Dr. Bolivar, how's the research on that rogue? Dr. Bolivar thought for a moment, then said, it's progressing well, but it will take some time. We're researching how to replicate her ability with Sentinel robots. Once her ability data is uploaded to the database, all Sentinel robots can use Anna's power. Moreover, I'm trying to improve it so that Sentinel robots can absorb and replicate other mutants' abilities within a certain range without physical contact. Hearing this, Alessandro was shocked. He understood the implications better than anyone. From then on, the Sentinel robot's copying ability would no longer be limited. Abilities previously uncopyable would now be replicable, including Magneto Eric's power, and even the Messiah's abnormal abilities. Who could stop the Sentinel robots then? He was no longer worried about the Messiah, believing that the Messiah would be captured or killed by the Sentinel robots' onslaught. Now, he only feared the possibility of the Sentinel robots going rogue. I must be overthinking. How could the Sentinel robots go rogue? Alessandro reassured himself. After talking with Dr. Bolivar, the assassination task targeting the man in white, known as White Knight among mutants, was quickly arranged. Soon, a $4 million bounty appeared on the dark web. It didn't take long for the bounty to catch the attention of many, including top 10 ranked assassins. Recently, the most famous figure on the dark web was the Messiah, with a $370 million bounty, the highest ever. Unfortunately, the elusive Messiah was hard to locate, making assassination attempts futile. The appearance of a bounty on the White Knight mutant drew immediate interest. Since both targets were mutants, those who couldn't find the Messiah now had a new target. Quickly, the $4 million bounty was taken by the world's 10th-ranked assassin, disappointing many. Damn, that top 10 guy had to get involved. Looks like we won't get the bounty. Though they could still try to intercept the White Knight, claiming the bounty after the task expired, they didn't want to cross a top 10 assassin. Such a figure had unmatched abilities, weapons, and networks. They could be hunted down and killed in their sleep. Moreover, such top-tier assassins rarely failed missions. The White Knight was in for a tough time. If they were him, they'd prepare a will and arrange for someone to collect their body. As dark web users discussed and awaited the assassination news, the 10th-ranked assassin, Masaru Yamasaki, was already on a plane. En route, he finalized details with his employer. The next morning, bright sunlight streamed down. In a rarely visited park, Syd Castell sat on a swing, gently swaying with the breeze and sunlight. Ability, Divine Physique, 346-500, Level 2. Glancing at his panel, Syd's eyes sparkled with anticipation. Almost there, in a day or two, I should reach Level 3. He looked forward to reaching Level 3, expecting a qualitative change. Even at Level 2, the Divine Physique had brought significant changes. Syd found his body density much higher, with increased defense. Without tests, he could only estimate his strength, but he felt significantly stronger. I remember there's a zoo 2 kilometers away. Thinking this, Syd's eyes lit up with interest. He planned to go there for a test. Early in the morning, the zoo was likely closed, and even staff might not be there yet. End of chapter. Chapter 101. 10 minutes later, Syd hovered quietly above the zoo, making sure not to touch the ground. After a quick scan, his eyes locked onto the area where the king of beasts, the tiger, resided. In the early morning, the zoo was nearly empty. Syd silently floated down to the tiger's resting area, destroying the surveillance cameras in the process. Just as he landed and took a few steps, a nearby large yellow tiger awoke. Seeing the intruder, the massive tiger bared its teeth and roared, trying to drive him away. Syd hesitated for a moment, ready to use his chaos magic for defense, and then slowly approached. The tiger, accustomed to being fed, hesitated and took a few steps back as Syd neared. However, Syd's persistent approach provoked the tiger, which let out a roar and pounced on him. With reflexes far beyond normal humans, Syd clearly saw the tiger's movements, even catching a whiff of its scent. He raised his hands, attempting to grab the tiger's paws. The tiger struggled and roared continuously. Syd frowned slightly, feeling like he was holding a wriggling, bouncing fish, finding it somewhat difficult. Typically, a tiger's bone density is 3 to 5 times that of a human, with nearly 10 times the impact resistance and several times the strength. Yet now, Syd could forcibly hold a tiger, although this one seemed a bit weakened from captivity. This indicated that his physical strength was now comparable to the tiger's. In his deliberate testing, the tiger's claws grazed his right arm. Instantly, several scratches appeared on his arm. Syd looked up. The scratches weren't deep, only breaking the skin slightly, with a tiny bit of golden blood oozing out. As the tiger tried to bite him, Syd sealed its mouth with chaos magic, leaving it to whimper in fear with wide, terrified eyes. It seems my skin's defense isn't strong enough yet, Syd mused. I wonder if my skin's toughness can rival a rhinoceros's. Syd released the yellow tiger. Freed, the tiger whimpered and ran to a distance, watching him warily, finding him terrifying. After the test, Syd felt both disappointed and expectant. This was just level 2. What about level 3, 4, or 5? What would his defenses be like then? I wonder how many levels it will take for my body to withstand bullets. Thinking of Loki and Thor, Syd felt envious. Neither Loki nor Thor could be harmed by human firearms, their bodies incredibly resilient. Even Loki, after being smashed by Hulk, could act as if nothing had happened after a while, indicating their remarkable physical strength. And this was just their physical strength, not counting their divine powers. No wonder they were regarded as gods alongside the Greek and Egyptian pantheons. Though Thor, before fully awakening his power, seemed more like an alien than a god, somewhat tarnishing the image of divinity. Of course, Syd felt that his mimicked version of Balder was different. Balder, the god of light, was rumored to be the personification of light itself. His death was said to have caused the sun to lose its warmth and brightness. Even the light within people's hearts seemed to fade, leading to moral decay and downfall. In a way, the beginning of Ragnarok was tied to his death. From these descriptions, it was clear that Balder's power was rather abstract, unlike a typical god. Or perhaps this was the true power of the Asgardian gods. I wonder if I will possess these traits later on? With this thought, Syd eagerly anticipated further unlocking his abilities. The divine power, the abstract abilities, all intrigued him. But what level of unlocking would reveal these powers? Unlocking progress, 34%. Glancing at the progress bar, Syd channeled the energy points he had accumulated into it. In an instant, the unlocking progress changed. Unlocking progress, 37%. Hearing no anticipated notification, Syd felt slightly disappointed. Had it not been for the constant practice and consumption of the divine physique, replenishing his energy with sunlight, he would have had more energy points. First, I'll get the divine physique to level 3, then focus on unlocking the next ability. Syd pondered. At that moment, distant footsteps and shouts approached, indicating someone had noticed the commotion and was coming to investigate. Glancing at the cowering tiger, Syd chuckled, shook his head, and left silently before anyone arrived, leaving the tiger bewildered. The tiger seemed to ponder the fact that two-legged creatures could fly. Its eyes filled with more fear as it thought. They were indeed terrifying. Good thing it hadn't attacked them earlier. With these thoughts, the tiger crouched down and instinctively licked its paw. Unnoticed, a few tiny threads of golden blood were absorbed into its body, beginning to change it rapidly. 2 male workers arrived, hearing the tiger's agonized screams. What's happening? What's wrong with the tiger? The 2 young workers stared in shock at the tiger rolling and wailing on the ground. Blood oozed from the tiger's body, quickly rendering it emaciated. However, despite its gaunt appearance, its aura grew increasingly terrifying, like a beast ready to devour anyone. Tiny golden tendrils emerged from its body, absorbing the blood on the ground. Witnessing this horrifying scene and the tiger's grotesque transformation, the workers were terrified and turned to flee. But before they could run, the tiger leaped like a rocket, reaching them in a few bounds. Before they could react, they saw the golden tendrils from the tiger pierce them. Help! In an instant, they were punctured and left riddled with holes. Gurgling sounds followed as the tendrils drained their blood, leaving them as dried corpses on the ground. The tiger's eyes showed fear, but its newfound consciousness harbored no such emotions, surveying its surroundings. Influenced by this consciousness, the tiger's eyes filled with a longing expression. It wanted to find its father, or rather, its master. End of chapter. Chapter 102. With these thoughts, the tiger leaped out of the zoo's iron fence in a few bounds. Then, it ran in the direction it remembered the man had left, hoping to find him. If Syd were here, he would immediately recognize what was happening and feel exasperated. Ultimately, this had to do with his blood, though not entirely. While his blood was potent and could potentially enhance ordinary creatures, it could also kill them, but it wouldn't cause such a mutation. The main cause of this mutation was venom. Since venom was hosted on his right hand, and the tiger had scratched his right hand, some of venom's tissue likely remained on the tiger's claw. When the tiger ingested it, this scene naturally unfolded. The entity now residing in the tiger was a mutated offspring of venom, caused by Syd's blood. If Syd had been present, he wouldn't have known how to handle this situation, which was connected to him yet beyond his control. At that moment, Syd returned to the desolate park and sat on the swing. Let me check if Chelus has completed the task I assigned him. Syd suddenly remembered that it had been a while since he checked on Chelus and the mission to steal energy weapons from S.H.I.E.L.D. He wondered about the progress. Given the advantage of teleportation, there should have been some success, right? With this thought, he used his mental connection to focus his consciousness on Chelus. Upon tuning in, he saw Chelus and a few followers discussing whether to set up a magical ritual to communicate with him. Let's wait a bit longer. I believe the great demon god will notice us soon, Chelus decided. Seeing his decision, the others agreed and moved on to other topics. Has anyone found the remaining shield weapon locations? A slightly overweight follower in black asked curiously. Shield is very vigilant, it's hard to pinpoint the locations. Yes, our previous thefts have put them on high alert. Fortunately, we've collected quite a bit already. It should satisfy the demon god. The followers discussed among themselves. Overhearing this, Syd became curious and excited. From their conversation, it seems they've collected quite a few energy weapons. Syd quickly scanned their surroundings. Soon, he noticed a pile of energy weapons on an altar nearby, including standard energy guns and other peculiar designs. In total, there were about 70 or 80 items. This should be enough. Seeing these weapons, Syd's eyes lit up. Chelus, bring the items to the designated location, he commanded in a voice resonant like a divine decree. Chelus froze for a moment, then became excited. Yes, I will follow your instructions. Chelus replied respectfully. Quickly, Chelus used a portal to transport the energy weapons to Syd's designated location, pleasing him. This minion did well, Syd couldn't help but remark. If he had done it himself, it would have taken much longer, and he might not have acquired as much. Thinking this, he pondered what ability to lend Chelus this time. After all, you have to give to receive. It wouldn't be fair to provide no benefits. After some thought, he chose an ability he hadn't showcased much before. Soul extraction. This ability, overshadowed by more useful ones, hadn't seen much use and was nearly forgotten. While it seemed redundant to Syd, it would be invaluable to these sorcerers. As long as they didn't face someone with a strong spirit or soul, like Professor X, ordinary people hit by soul extraction would be almost certainly doomed. The soul would be pulled out, leaving no room for resistance. With this in mind, Syd lent the ability to Chelus. This is the power I grant you, called soul extraction, a resonant voice echoed. In the next moment, Chelus felt different, sensing a new ability within him. Is this astral projection? Chelus, familiar with out-of-body abilities, wondered if this was similar. In Eastern terms, it would be like the soul leaving the body. No, it's not that simple. Using a portal, Chelus grabbed a wild boar and pulled his hand away. His followers were amazed. In Chelus' right hand was a blue energy orb containing a miniaturized boar, its soul. Instinctively, Chelus tightened his grip slightly. The blue orb shattered effortlessly. Similarly, the boar's soul inside the orb shattered with a wail. Chelus and his followers were astonished. Such power. Instantly, they thought of various combat techniques using this ability. Using magic had its costs. Even white magic had side effects if overused. These included taste disorders, nightmares, negative emotions, etc., making Kamar-Taj sorcerers prefer close combat. Thus, a close-range soul extraction ability was more appealing than repulsive. I feel that using soul extraction has no cost, Chelus murmured. It required only a bit of mental strength, physical energy, and magic. His followers, hearing this, were even more envious. It was evident that the lack of cost was due to the demon god not demanding a price. At this moment, they contemplated how to please the demon god, hoping to receive such cost-free power and magic. Syd, seeing their expressions, understood their thoughts but knew they were overly optimistic. Aside from abilities, the magical energy they called light energy was something he barely had enough of for himself, let alone lend to them. Even Chelus still borrowed magic from other dimensions for most spells. Still, he didn't voice this, letting them dream on. End of chapter.
Chapter 103. After checking on Chelus, Syd refocused on his own situation. His hands glowed red as he floated towards the location where Chelus had placed the energy weapons. Soon, he arrived at the secluded spot. Seeing the pile of weapons on the ground, Syd squatted down and began absorbing the energy. Blue light flickered from the weapons, with strands of spatial energy seeping out and crawling onto his hands, quickly entering his body. Syd could feel the damaged Orochi panel rapidly recovering. As time passed, one weapon after another was drained of its energy. Soon, he heard a series of notifications. Ability: Levitation, unlocked. Ability: Sunshine, unlocked. Hearing the notifications, Syd withdrew his hands, feeling quite pleased. Finally, all my abilities are restored. I have a preliminary means of self-protection. Syd breathed a sigh of relief. In the Marvel Universe, where gods and powerful beings were everywhere, even with Sunburst, he still felt a bit uncertain. After all, the previous out-of-control incident was a fluke. He couldn't rely on losing control every time to unleash a city-destroying move. Under normal circumstances, Sunshine at level 3 might cover about 120 meters, which was great for dealing with weaker foes but uncertain against stronger opponents. Thinking about this made Syd even more eager to improve his strength. Given more time, he could surely develop his powers to their fullest. Looking at the abilities on his panel, Syd focused on his current weak spot. Ability: Godly Physique, 346/500, level 2. It fits better than Divine. Let's get this to level 3 first. I wonder if I can upgrade it this afternoon. He started channeling the nascent divine power within his body. A series of notifications sounded. Godly Physique Experience +1. Godly Physique Experience +1. Godly Physique Experience +1. As he practiced Godly Physique, Syd also pondered other ways to enhance his strength, possibly through external means. If he could become stronger through experiments, he'd consider it, but as a wanted fugitive, that wasn't feasible. So, external items were his only option. I remember in Thor, the Dark World, the Ether, or Reality Stone, appeared, right? On Earth. Or maybe in a space connected to Earth. Syd pondered. The Reality Stone was a game-changing item, capable of altering reality much like chaos magic. For example, turning bullets into bubbles or people into stone. Simple tasks for the Reality Stone. It could reshape the surroundings according to the user's will. Of course, the power of a single stone had limits, and the Reality Stone's effect varied with the user's strength. Its changes were temporary, and things reverted if the stone was moved too far away. Unlike chaos magic, which could make permanent changes, bending reality without breaking the universe, a remarkable feat. Still, the Reality Stone was more convenient and stable, ready for use whenever needed. And with other stones, its effects would be extraordinary. With the Infinity Gauntlet linking all the stones, the Reality Stone could erase physical forms, the Soul Stone could erase souls, and the other stones would make these changes permanent. Syd frowned. Better not gather all the Infinity Stones. With my current strength, I probably can't withstand them. Even if he did nothing, he could still turn to dust, a victim of cosmic whims. Unless, of course, the stones were in his possession. Currently, Earth has the Time Stone, Space Stone, and possibly the Reality Stone. The Mind Stone will appear later. Syd grimaced. 6 stones in total, yet so many were on Earth. It was absurd. Where exactly is the Ether, the Reality Stone? Suddenly, Syd realized he couldn't recall the exact location. He remembered that Jane Foster had to find it, after which it truly appeared. Seems like I need to keep an eye on Jane Foster, waiting for her to disappear. That's when the Reality Stone will emerge. Syd rubbed his chin in thought. Under the sunlight, his body continuously replenished its consumed energy. Godly Physique Experience +1. Time passed, and soon it was around 2 p.m. Ability: Godly Physique, 488/500, level 2. Leaving the park, Syd walked along a secluded path, checking his experience points. Almost level 3. As he circulated the nascent divine power within his body, someone began quietly stalking him. Watching the white-clad figure from a distance, Masao Yamasaki's eyes showed disdain. A mere mutant, no matter how powerful, had a fragile body. A successful ambush would take down even the strongest mutant. Even the Messiah would die if I got to him, let alone this so-called White Knight. Yamasaki thought disdainfully. Preparing to act, hidden cameras began broadcasting the scene live. Is it that weird guy in white again? Is he going to strike? Excited viewers watched, anticipation in their eyes. Those in the know felt a twinge of sympathy for Syd. A top 10 world-class assassin. His targets never survived. If they were the man in white, they'd have prepared a will and coffin long ago. How pitiful. Influential figures and those in the know felt sorry for him. At that moment, walking along the street, Syd noticed 2 middle-aged passers-by approaching. Initially, they didn't catch his attention. After all, he often encountered others. However, as they were about to pass by, Syd noticed something odd in his peripheral vision. The middle-aged man with a mustache on the left suddenly moved his right hand. With a swift motion, a sharp dagger slid from his sleeve. In a flash, the dagger aimed for Syd's heart. In that instant, both Venom and Syd were momentarily stunned. How did this man attack without triggering his danger sense? End of chapter. Chapter 104 inches the face of imminent danger. Syd didn't have time to think. Relying on his superior reflexes, he quickly used Chaos Magic. Chaos Magic Experience +1. A red glow appeared on his chest, effectively blocking the incoming dagger. Seeing the dagger halted, Syd breathed a sigh of relief. Thankfully, his reaction speed was fast. Otherwise, he might have been in serious trouble. Given his current level of godly physique, he might not have been able to completely block the dagger's attack, potentially resulting in a wound, albeit not a fatal one. After all, even a rhino or elephant would get hurt by a sharp dagger, let alone him. In a split second, Syd decided to use Chaos Magic to restrain the attacker. However, something unexpected happened, surprising both him and the viewers. As the dagger thrust forward, a thick white smoke quickly emanated from Masao Yamasaki, engulfing him. Yamasaki's figure blurred and vanished into the dense fog, completing the process smoothly and swiftly. Chaos Magic Experience +1. Syd reached out with Chaos Magic into the mist. To his surprise, the mustached man seemed to have disappeared or quickly relocated. The fog rapidly spread across the entire street, creating a dense environment where visibility was nearly zero. This strange technique caught Syd off guard. At this moment, the viewers were equally surprised and amazed. What a peculiar technique. Is he a mutant? Is this a mutant ability? It doesn't seem like it. It looks more like those ninja arts from Japan, just some deceptive tricks. Now that you mention it, he does look a bit like someone from there. It looks like the guy in white is in trouble. This assassin seems very skilled. One wrong move and the guy in white might get killed. The viewers discussed the situation gleefully. They believed that no matter how good the guy in white's mutant abilities were, he might not even have the chance to use them before getting killed by these assassination techniques. However, the thick fog annoyed them, as they couldn't see the fight clearly and had to rely on sounds to judge the situation. At that moment, several faint whistling sounds came from the mist, indicating something flying towards Syd. Frowning, Syd used Chaos Magic to create a shield in front of him. Boom! A series of explosions erupted, engulfing everything in front of him in flames. Boom! 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 More bomb-like projectiles resembling shurikens kept coming, making Syd increasingly frustrated. He almost wanted to use Sunburst to clear the entire street and kill this annoying flea. Unable to tolerate it any longer, Syd's hands glowed red as he floated into the air, quickly ascending dozens of meters above the fog. Seeing him suddenly fly away, Masao Yamasaki, ready for another attack, was stunned and spat in annoyance. Damn coward, running away because you can't win. Just as he thought this, a red beam descended from the sky. Boom! Not far away, the ground exploded, creating a nearly 2-meter deep crater. Another explosion followed quickly. Yamasaki was astonished, unsure of what was happening. The viewers, who had been gloating, were also confused. However, it soon became clear. A black beetle-like camera, specifically for filming, quickly flew out of the fog and captured the scene from high above, revealing the guy in white. Syd was seen continuously releasing red energy blasts from his hands, bombarding the ground below. Boom! 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 The ground shook constantly, craters forming one after another, and walls collapsing. The viewers were in disbelief. This guy's mutant ability was this powerful? In such widespread bombardment, who could survive? No matter how skilled the assassination techniques were, they couldn't succeed under this onslaught. Surely, he would die. They suddenly realized they had misjudged the situation, and many of them felt uneasy. The immense commotion, like a map-wide artillery strike, shocked not only the viewers but also passers-by on distant streets who noticed the incident. Oh my God, may the Lord protect us. What's happening? It's the guy in white, the mutant. Soon, people recognized who the floating figure was. But at the same time, they were shocked by his power. The ground continued to shake, and loud explosions echoed from below. Not long after, the fog dispersed, revealing the aftermath. Within a range of dozens of meters, there was hardly anything intact, only variously sized craters. At the center of the devastation, they saw Masao Yamasaki lying in the rubble, covered in blood and barely alive. As for the other middle-aged man, He had long since lost his life. Defeated already? An entire street destroyed? Forget the city-destroying messiah. Even this new mutant is terrifying? Why are there so many powerful mutants? The viewers and many influential figures were shocked and stunned. Syd paused his bombardment and slowly floated down to Masao Yamasaki. Seeing him approach, Yamasaki glared at him fiercely. Syd raised his right hand, enveloping Yamasaki in a red glow, lifting him into the air. "You bastard! You damn bastard!" Yamasaki spat out blood and cursed vehemently. Syd understood the meaning, and his expression turned cold. He slowly clenched his right hand. Ah! Yamasaki, no longer in the mood to curse, trembled violently and let out a scream that sent chills down the viewers' spines. His body, compressed by the red glow, emitted cracking sounds. Yamasaki's face contorted in agony, with emotions of despair, fear, resentment, and hatred flashing in his eyes. Damn! Ah! With a final scream, Yamasaki's body burst into pieces, blood splattering everywhere like rain. Witnessing this brutal scene, everyone felt a deep fear of Syd and mutants. Soon, someone in the distant crowd started running away in terror. In no time, the area within hundreds of meters was deserted. For now, Syd had no interest in them. He checked his remaining energy after the bombardment and frowned, thinking. Although the assassin was dead, he knew this wouldn't be the end. His current identity, though not as high profile as his previous one, had still attracted a lot of attention, and such incidents were likely to continue. Reflecting on this, Syd realized another serious issue. End of chapter.
Chapter 105 Has the danger sense failed? Pondering this, Syd decided to question Venom in detail. Flying away from the scene, he asked aloud, "Venom, what happened to your danger sense? Why didn't you warn me beforehand?" At that moment, Venom's small head emerged from his right hand. "It's terrible, I don't know," Venom said dejectedly. "Before that human attacked, I didn't sense any danger. That's not normal." Syd knew it wasn't normal either and pressed for more details. "What exactly did you feel?" Venom replied, bewildered. "It felt just like any other time. I didn't sense anything unusual." Syd frowned. Quickly, he thought of something. That assassin had another person with him. If his guess was correct, it must be because of that person. Hopefully, this is an isolated case. Otherwise, it will be troublesome. Syd felt the situation was tricky. If his danger sense failed every time there was an assassination attempt, things would get really bad. Given his current fragile body, any unnoticed attack could be life-threatening. After all, he couldn't stay vigilant every second. He needed to rest sometimes. "I need to enhance my godly physique as soon as possible. With a denser body, I'll have more confidence facing attacks." Thinking about godly physique, Syd realized he was close to leveling up. As he flew away, he began channeling the nascent divine power within him. Godly physique experience +1. Godly physique experience +1. After some time, a notification sounded in his ear. Ability, Godly Physique, 0-1000, Level 3. Syd immediately felt a significant change in his body. A warm current spread throughout his body, increasing the density of his bones, muscles, and skin. His physique and appearance also improved, becoming more perfect. The energy within his blood grew more potent. Syd sensed the nascent divine power within him rising, and his overall mental state becoming more vigorous. The overall changes were similar to the previous upgrades but on a much larger scale. Squeezing his left arm, Syd felt that his defense had increased significantly. As for the exact amount, he was unsure. Let's test it out. Soon, Syd returned to the zoo from last time. As he arrived, he noticed that the area had been cordoned off by the police, seemingly to prevent ordinary people from entering. It didn't take long for him to find out what had happened. Syd was surprised. So, that tiger mutated. He wasn't too surprised, though. He had seen similar situations before. In Venom 2, Eddie had been bitten, and the resulting blood ingestion led to the birth of a new symbiote, Carnage. Carnage was much stronger than the original Venom, and every newly born symbiote was stronger than the original. After thinking for a moment, Syd shook his head and dismissed the matter. The mutated tiger had little to do with him, as long as it didn't interfere with him. Taking advantage of the lack of attention, Syd destroyed a few cameras and approached a tiger. With experience from before, this time he used his left hand. Roar! The tiger growled angrily, swiping its paw at him. Swipe! The large paw brushed against Syd's left arm. To his surprise, the arm remained unscathed, with only a few white marks that quickly disappeared. Syd was amazed. It seems my body density has increased significantly. At that moment, the tiger, still enraged, opened its jaws to bite him. Syd grabbed its neck with his left hand, easily subduing it despite its struggles, clearly indicating his strength had grown considerably. Thinking it over, he used chaos magic to seal the tiger's mouth. Although his arm could now withstand the tiger's claws, he didn't want to test its bite force. Being bitten might not result in lost limbs like an ordinary person, but it would certainly break the skin and cause bleeding. Bleeding would be inconvenient. Before anyone arrived, Syd silently left the area. What's going on here again? What's wrong with this tiger? Several workers and police officers ran over, puzzled by the tiger's anxious pacing. Two middle-aged officers began talking. Could this tiger be mutating too? The younger officer asked warily. It can't be that coincidental. I've already requested an inspection team to take them away for examination, replied Officer Oro. The younger officer, Edward, sighed. I heard that mutated tiger has killed more people. What's going on lately? Why are these things happening? What's the cause of the tiger's mutation? While they talked, the mutated tiger they referred to was stalking someone in the shadows. In a secluded alley, screams and crashes echoed. Bang, bang, bang. Gunshots rang out intermittently. Monster. Cornered and desperate, 6 black-clad men with guns huddled against a wall in terror. Their target was a monstrous figure over 2 meters tall, covered in black, hideous symbiote venom. Chomp! Venom bit off a man's head, licking his lips as he eyed the others. Hurry up, people are coming, Eddie urged. Yeah, Eddie, you're so annoying. Venom, or rather the newly named Carnage, replied impatiently. He was about to leap and finish off the remaining men when he paused, looking towards a distant direction. Eddie, something's wrong. What's the matter? While Carnage was on alert, Eddie was puzzled, and the black-clad men were terrified as a large yellow tiger emerged from the shadows. The tiger grinned menacingly, showing its sharp teeth. Damn, I see it smiling, Eddie exclaimed. What the hell is this? As they wondered, a hoarse, bloodthirsty voice spoke. I sense the presence of God, of my master, from you, human. How strange. A gold-red liquid oozed from the tiger's head, forming a liquid face resembling a tiger's. The voice came from its mouth. What are you? A symbiote. Carnage and Eddie exclaimed. Then, they noticed the strange symbiote's words. God. Master. What is it talking about? Both Carnage and Eddie, as well as the 6 black-clad men, looked puzzled. End of chapter.
Chapter 106. Are you a symbiote? What do you mean by God and Master? Eddie asked, confused. The symbiote-possessed tiger, nicknamed Bomber, bared its fangs menacingly. God is God. You, a mere mortal, cannot comprehend his power. With that, it suddenly lunged at the 6 black-clad men in the distance, moving with incredible speed, leaving only afterimages. Seeing the monster charge, the already tense men screamed and fired their guns. Bang! 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 Bullets whizzed through the air at supersonic speeds, seemingly about to hit the target and kill the monster. To their shock, and to the surprise of Eddie and Venom, strands of golden-red tendrils emerged from the tiger, wrapping around the bullets and effortlessly neutralizing them. Monster! Another monster! The men were terrified. Bomber leaped among them, extending tendrils that quickly drained 2 of them, turning them into desiccated corpses. Witnessing this horrifying scene, both the remaining 4 men and Eddie and Venom were scared. This eerie tiger's speed and strange attack methods were terrifying. Staring at the blood-sucking bomber, Eddie, within Venom's symbiotic form, fearfully said, Hey Venom, I think I know what it means by God and Master now. Doesn't take a genius, Eddie. Venom would have rolled his eyes if he could. Both Venom and Eddie, as well as the 4 remaining men, realized the gravity of the situation. If this eerie tiger was so powerful, then its God or Master must be even more terrifying. After finishing its meal, Bomber ignored the bullets fired by the terrified men and turned its head towards Eddie and Venom. You are strange. You are like a part of the god, my master, possessing a similar aura. It began questioning, what is your relationship with the Great One? You, a weak human, and you, a creature like me but far weaker. How could you be connected to a god? Answer me. It bared its fangs and glared at them, a mix of excitement and anticipation in its eyes. Eddie and Venom were bewildered, not understanding what this monster was talking about. Still, they realized the danger they were in. Reluctantly admitting it, Venom sensed that this creature was extremely dangerous, its power beyond imagination. He couldn't fathom why this damn tiger symbiote was so absurdly strong, stronger than anything he'd seen. They racked their brains for a way out. Suddenly, Venom had an idea. Damn, could it be talking about my other half? Eddie was taken aback, then remembered something. Tell me everything you know, Bomber demanded. Quickly, Venom recounted his experiences, including an encounter with a mysterious man in black. As he listened, Bomber's eyes gleamed with understanding. If that's the case, everything makes sense. Your other half is hosted by the god, my master. And through him, with some of the god's blood and power, I was indirectly created. Bomber murmured. Upon hearing this, Venom, Eddie, and the four men were stunned, then gasped. So this monster was born because of that so-called god? No wonder it's so hard to deal with. Wait, does that mean there's really a god in this world? Just a bit of his blood and power created this monster? They were incredulous. If this monster was so strong, then what about the god it spoke of? Who was this god, anyway? Suddenly, Eddie remembered something. Wait, Venom, could this god be the Messiah? Venom was stunned, then recalled the identity of that individual. They had heard and seen news of the Messiah destroying a city not long ago. Comparing the mysterious man with the Messiah, they realized that he was indeed the Messiah. So this tiger's god might be the Messiah? After all, Venom's other half had been hosted by him. Though they knew the Messiah was terrifying, creating such a monster with just a bit of blood and power was unimaginable. At this moment, both Eddie and Venom, and the four men who overheard, were stunned and incredulous. This monster was created by the Messiah's blood and power? If it's his blood and power, that makes sense. Damn, just a bit of his stuff can kill us. The four men spoke, faces filled with unwillingness and fear. As for Venom, he felt a surge of envy and jealousy. Though he believed he and Eddie were well matched and didn't want to change hosts, he couldn't help but feel those emotions. At that moment, Messiah. Bomber paused, finding relevant information in the memories of those it had consumed, then felt a burst of joy. Finally, some information about its master. Knowing this, in the next instant, with a few swipes, Bomber killed the four men trying to escape, devouring them. After finishing them, it saw that Eddie and Venom had already run far away. Bomber hesitated, unsure whether to chase them. After a moment, it decided against it. Those two seem connected to my master, so I'll let them go. With that thought, Bomber leaped away to continue its search for its master. In the distance. Is it still following? Eddie asked worriedly as they ran. No. Venom sensed. Relieved. They both sighed in relief. Sensing Eddie's worry, Venom reassured him. Don't worry, Eddie. With how arrogant it is, it'll get into trouble soon enough. Eddie relaxed at that, thinking Venom was right. As he relaxed, a thought struck him, and his eyes lit up. Venom, do you think the latest news about the Messiah would be worth a lot? Venom paused, remembering that Eddie was still a journalist. End of chapter. Chapter 107. Quickly, Eddie sold the news about the mutated tiger for a very high price. As he had anticipated, anything related to the Messiah drew significant attention. Even a mutated tiger was no exception. Upon hearing the news, many people started plotting to capture it. While Eddie happily counted his money and various factions rejoiced at the appearance of the mutated tiger, Irena, who hadn't hosted a live broadcast in a long time, started one. Under the spotlight, Irena, with her slender figure and wearing a light green long dress, looked stunning. Hello, everyone. It's been a long time. Irena smiled, her red lips captivating. Watching the broadcast, the audience and netizens felt confused. Even the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants were puzzled. Since Irena had mentioned the authorities' plans to bring more firepower and troops, only for them to lose again, she hadn't hosted any live broadcasts for a long time. Whether it was embarrassment or fear of backlash, she hadn't continued her show. So why now? Under the spotlight, Irena showed a pitiful expression. I know you want to criticize me, but please hold off. This time, I bring you the latest news about the Messiah. The latest news about the Messiah? The audience and netizens were intrigued. and the mutants watching became more alert. The news about the Messiah made them pause their criticisms, ready to hear what Irena had to say. Under the spotlight, Irena sighed. According to reliable sources, the monstrous tiger roaming the city and killing people is related to the Messiah. It's rumored that this tiger's mutation and birth are connected to him. Hearing her words, countless viewers were stunned. Lately, besides news about the Messiah and the white-clad freak, the murderous tiger had garnered the most attention online. The tiger's presence had made many people afraid to leave their homes, fearing for their lives. And now, this murderous tiger was connected to the Messiah? The audience was shocked. Irena continued, rest assured, the authorities are already planning to capture it. It won't be long before this mutated tiger is dealt with. Moreover, I have more news for you today. According to reliable sources, the Messiah has appeared in a small city. Her face filled with righteous indignation, Irena said. This Messiah not only defies the government's attempts to capture him but is also recruiting disciples. He has gathered many mutants, seemingly to oppose the government. Among them, 12 apostles, or guardian knights, have committed numerous heinous acts. Upon hearing this, both ordinary viewers and mutants like the X-Men were taken aback. The Messiah was recruiting mutants to rebel against the government? And he had appointed 12 apostles? At the X-Mansion. This child, Professor X, sitting in his wheelchair, looked grave, sighing inwardly at the misguided path the Messiah was taking. He pondered how to guide this powerful Omega mutant back onto the right path. Beside him, the burly Colossus and Wolverine, Logan, looked incredulous. Could Sue really be doing such things? They found it hard to believe. At the Brotherhood of Mutants, Eric, listening to Irena's latest news, brightened up, smiling gradually. This child is on the right path. Not only did he think the Messiah was not wrong, but he also thought he was doing great. He felt that the Messiah was becoming more like him. If they met, they might become close friends. Magneto thought to himself. At Stark Tower, Tony Stark, busy working on his armor, looked serious, feeling that human society might face significant turmoil because of the Messiah. He wondered if there was any way to stop the Messiah. Meanwhile, in the broadcast, Irena pointed to a large screen in the distance. In the next second, the large screen filled most of the broadcast, with Irena becoming a small window. As the footage began playing, Irena narrated, "This is a battle scene of one of the 12 apostles, the Crystal Man." In front of countless viewers, a young black man was confronting 7 or 8 armed men. The young man smirked, then extended his right hand towards them. In the next instant, the armed men cried out as transparent, crystalline substances rapidly covered their bodies. In mere moments, they were immobilized, transformed into crystal statues. Through the transparent crystals, their terrified, desperate expressions were visible. They looked like insects trapped in amber, frozen in time. During this, some had realized the danger and fired their guns, but the bullets were encased in crystals mid-air and fell to the ground. This only deepened their despair. As the footage played, Irena, with a serious expression, said, "This is the power of the Messiah's disciple, one of the 12 apostles, the Crystal Man. Recently, he attacked this base alone, and everyone inside died. Not a single person survived. This Crystal Man's actions are utterly vile, defying the law." Finally, Irena said gravely, "And this is just one of the Messiah's apostles. There are 11 more." Listening to her, countless people gasped. This was terrifying. What kind of power, what kind of force was this? Especially with the Messiah involved. At this point, the footage of the Crystal Man changed to another scene. In the new footage, a familiar-looking young man in black stood on a platform, giving a speech. Below him, hundreds of fanatical followers listened. This shocking scene made countless people gasp again. Ordinary citizens were terrified, though a small number were dismissive. Does he really think he's a god? Does he think no one can take him down? Having some power makes him so arrogant? These were the voices of those in positions of power and those with strong abilities. End of chapter. Chapter 108. They thought this Messiah was nothing but a clown. With such arrogance, someone would inevitably deal with him sooner or later. And just as they predicted, Irena's solemn voice rang out in the broadcast. Rest assured, viewers, such evil forces will not be tolerated by the government. Authorities are already addressing this issue, and it won't be long before we have an answer. Neither the 12 apostles nor this Messiah will escape. Rumor has it that the authorities have prepared even more powerful and mysterious weapons this time. Please rest assured. Irena comforted the many viewers. However, despite her reassurances, the viewers weren't entirely convinced. The Messiah was so powerful. What kind of secret weapon could possibly deal with him? No matter what Irena said this time, they found it hard to believe. Irena knew what most of the audience was thinking, but she didn't rush to argue. Time would prove everything. She smiled confidently. Seeing her sudden confident smile, X-Men like Logan and members of the Brotherhood of Mutants felt a pang of worry for Syd. What preparations did they have to make this woman so confident? They believed Irena wasn't foolish and wouldn't underestimate the power of the Messiah. At Stark Tower, Tony Stark had just recovered from Irena's news bombardment when he heard Jarvis's voice. "Sir, you have a call." Tony Stark was puzzled. He glanced at the phone but decided to ignore it. After a while, when Tony didn't answer, Jarvis's voice sounded again. "Sir, my program has been altered." Then, the voice of a middle-aged man came through. "Mr. Stark, I need to speak with you." It was S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Phil Coulson. Tony Stark sighed, picked up the phone, and quickly said, "This is, Agent Coulson. Please be brief. I'm busy." Soon, Agent Coulson arrived via elevator. He raised his hand and handed Tony Stark a file. Tony didn't take it and casually said, "I don't like people handing me things." Coulson, exasperated, remembered Tony Stark's peculiar habit. After placing the file on the table, Tony Stark began to flip through it. "And this is?" he asked as he read. "Mr. Stark, these are some materials on the Sentinel robots. The director hopes you can join the project to help us perfect them," Coulson explained. Putting the file down, Tony Stark impatiently said, "Hey, Agent, why should I help you?" He knew what the Sentinels were and always thought they were too dangerous. Coulson corrected him, "Mr. Stark, this isn't helping me. It's helping S.H.I.E.L.D. I'll be frank, Mr. Stark, that mutant Messiah is too dangerous. We need your help to perfect the Sentinels so we can deal with him." Tony frowned and said, "He's just a kid. Maybe there's still room for negotiation. Are you sure this is necessary?" Honestly, he was reluctant to develop dangerous weapons to target a kid. To him, the Messiah was still a child. Everyone had their youthful indiscretions, and perhaps destroying a city wasn't his intention. From his usual behavior, he didn't seem like a mass murderer. If not for Coulson and others pushing him, that child might not have done such a thing. Coulson, frustrated, said, "Mr. Stark, he's no longer a child. Have you ever seen a child destroy a city? The power he holds is too dangerous. If not dealt with in time, it could lead to greater disasters." They talked for a long time, but in the end, Tony didn't agree to join the project. However, he had his own plan. He decided to visit the child soon to see if there was a chance for reconciliation. While Tony and Agent Coulson talked and various factions took action, Syd was utterly baffled. Standing in a hidden corner, watching the broadcast on the big screen in the square, he was completely dumbfounded. He could only say, "Who can understand this?" After waking up, he suddenly had 12 apostles and a bunch of followers out of nowhere. Who understands? Syd was speechless. He was still here, yet everywhere people were talking about him recruiting disciples, having 12 apostles, and guardian knights. Watching Irena's broadcast, his mouth twitched non-stop. Who is this person? At that moment, the broadcast showed the Messiah giving a speech on a high platform. Syd looked at the person from different angles but couldn't see any difference in appearance. Is it Mystique? From his memory, the only one who could mimic a person so perfectly was Mystique. But then he thought it might not be her. And these 12 apostles? Syd curiously observed the so-called apostles and couldn't help but admire the imposter's ability to recruit people. After watching the entire broadcast, he pondered. Eventually, he decided to find out who this imposter was. He went to a secluded alley and waited for a while. After dealing with a group of armed robbers, he obtained some cash. Quickly, he used the money to get a map. In the next moment, he took off, flying swiftly towards his target. Unlike before, this time he flew at an incredible speed, leaving only a shadow visible to the naked eye. It was the newly unlocked floating flight. Floating flight experience +1. Feeling the wind, Syd couldn't help but marvel at the speed of floating flight. It was much faster than using chaotic magic. Of course, it was still slower than the supersonic speed of Mjolnir. However, floating flight was only at level 4. As his fastest growing ability, it would likely match or surpass Mjolnir's speed at level 5. Thinking of Mjolnir, Syd recalled Thor. He wondered when Thor would reappear. While heading towards his destination, preparing to see the commotion, the mutated tiger cannonball also noticed the news about him and happily set off to find its master. Not only it, but the X-Men and Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants also began to take action. End of chapter. Chapter 109 X Academy. Scott, take Storm and the others and try to persuade the child. Professor Xavier, sitting in his wheelchair, instructed Scott, who was standing not far away. I'll go too, Logan raised his hand. Chris and a few others also expressed their desire to go along. Charles considered their relationship with the child and agreed to their suggestion. Brotherhood of Mutants. Magneto sat in his chair, pondering for a while before deciding to send Mystique to talk to the child. Soon, Mystique set off with a few mutants. Meanwhile, at Base 23, black Sentinel robots suddenly raised their heads and looked into the distance, moving in unison. Swish, 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 they quickly flew towards their target. In addition to them, Tony had also donned his suit and was heading towards the same location. There were also individuals from other forces heading there quietly, including but not limited to Hydra, the Dabari aliens, and others. Messiah City. Since the arrival of the Messiah, the city had been renamed to Messiah City. At this moment, the 12 disciples of the Messiah, all mutants, were having a serious discussion. Why are you nervous? Let them come. Do you think we would be afraid? Said Iona, the crystal man, a tall and lean man with black skin, sitting in his chair indifferently. Indeed, no matter who they are, they won't be our match. Heidi, a red-haired woman in white, smiled. Beside her sat Kirill and Mark, both of whom had once encountered Syd and were awed by his terrifying power. Since witnessing his godlike destruction, they had admired him greatly, believing him to be the god of mutants, the one who could save them. So, when they heard about the Messiah recruiting disciples, they came without hesitation. Although the 12 disciples were chosen through a competition where the weak were eliminated, the initial spots were more available, so the 3 managed to secure positions. However, they would lose their spots if stronger newcomers appeared. Heidi smiled at the other 11 disciples. Moreover, with the godlike Messiah here, how could those weaklings be our match? A chorus of agreement followed her words. Yes. With Messiah-sama here, those people are no match. Messiah-sama is an Omega-level mutant. Those people seeking trouble with such a powerful mutant are seeking death. Half an hour later, a black fighter jet landed outside Messiah City. As the hatch opened, Logan and others, dressed in black X-Men uniforms, stepped out. This is Messiah City? Where is Syd? Cyclops and the others examined the small city ahead. Soon, they grabbed a city resident. Brother, do you know where Messiah is? Otto, a middle-aged man with a wrinkled face, asked a passerby. Initially feeling annoyed at being stopped, the young white man Bob's expression changed to one of fear. At the center of the city. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have things to do, Bob said quickly and then hurriedly ran away. Logan and the others exchanged glances, noticing the fear in the young man's eyes. It seems Syd isn't very popular, Otto remarked. As they spoke, they made their way towards the city center. However, halfway there, they saw tall black humanoid figures flying past in the distance. Sentinel robots. They recognized them immediately, and their faces changed. 1, 2, 10. Seeing only 10, Logan and the others sighed in relief but were also puzzled. These 10 Sentinels were undoubtedly sent to deal with Syd. After learning their lesson, knowing Syd's strength, why did the authorities only send 10 Sentinels? It seemed like a death mission. Scott and the others were perplexed. Thinking about it, they hurried towards the city center. By now, other forces had also arrived and were heading towards the city center. When Logan and the others approached the center, they saw 10 Sentinels standing outside a tall building, not making a move. What are they doing? Logan wondered. Why aren't they attacking? As time passed, the 12 disciples, wary but eager, walked out to confront the Sentinels. They included 10 men and 2 women, ranging from young teenagers to elderly men. Are they Messiah's 12 disciples? At this time, Raven and others from the Brotherhood of Mutants also arrived. Raven stood at a distance, cautiously watching the Sentinels. She found it strange. It was understandable if the disciples hesitated, but why weren't the Sentinels making a move? While they were confused, the reason was clear to Alessandro, who was secretly controlling the Sentinels, and Dr. Bolivar. They needed all forces to arrive before defeating the disciples and Messiah publicly, demonstrating the consequences of opposing their government. As time passed, more forces arrived, and even drones began live-streaming the scene. With millions of viewers watching, 3 factions emerged. The disciples led by Messiah, the Sentinels representing the official forces, and the X-Men and other forces. Even Iron Man Tony Stark arrived, frowning at the scene. When everyone had almost gathered, a hidden speaker on the shoulder of a Sentinel robot buzzed, "Laughable disciples, bring out your Messiah, or you won't have a chance later." Alessandro's mocking voice came through the speaker. Hearing this, Iona, the Crystal Man, sneered. "Just these robots. And you think they deserve Messiah-sama's attention? I alone can deal with this trash. With that, he acted immediately. Under millions of gazes, the 10 Sentinels were instantly covered in crystal layers. Within seconds, they were frozen in crystal. Seeing this, the onlookers from various forces were stunned. The Sentinels were dealt with just like that? Irena looked proud, secretly relieved, and said, "Sentinel robots? They're nothing." Just as he was about to continue, the disciples smiled, but then their faces changed. The Sentinels, frozen in crystal, began to glow red, turning into a magma-like form. In an instant, the crystals melted into liquid. Irena's face changed drastically, and the other disciples were equally shocked. Irena failed? These are Sentinel robots? They're tough to deal with? Whether it was the disciples or the Hydra forces, everyone was shocked. Several times, the Sentinels had been easily dealt with by Messiah, making them seem weak. But now, they realized they were underestimated. Was it that Messiah was too strong, making the Sentinels seem weak? Flying in the distance, Tony was also surprised, more impressed by the child's power. Agent Coulson's words seemed more credible. The child's power was indeed terrifying. As they thought it was over, the Sentinels displayed an even more horrifying scene. Irena tried to use his powers, covering the Sentinels in layers of crystal, trying to freeze them again. But before he could succeed, something strange happened to him, catching everyone's attention. What happened to Irena? Is this a manifestation of his powers? A familiar crystal layer appeared on Irena. Thinking it was a manifestation of his powers, Irena's terrified shout interrupted their thoughts. Crystal.
How is this possible? I didn't activate my powers on myself. Heidi, help. Irena reached out, trying to ask for help, but before he could finish, he was completely encased in crystal, his terrified and confused expression visible inside. This is. Everyone, including Logan and the onlookers, realized something was wrong. The crystal on Irena wasn't a manifestation of his powers. It was. The Sentinels. Eyes widened in shock, looking at the Sentinels. Gasps erupted. My God, they can copy mutant abilities. Did they copy Irena's power? I heard Sentinels had flaws and couldn't copy abilities. What's going on? Have they been upgraded? Cyclops Scott and the others felt a deep fear. Watching the live stream, Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto were equally alarmed. If the Sentinels could freely copy abilities, what future did mutants have? Even Professor X worried about the future of mutants. While mutants worried, millions of viewers were thrilled. My God, copying abilities. That mutant Messiah is nothing against these Sentinels. So strong. Defeat those damn mutants. Kill Messiah, avenge the city's people. Haha. Their initial doubts turned to belief that the Sentinels could defeat Messiah. The next scene confirmed their thoughts. Seeing Irena frozen, Heidi and others couldn't sit still and attacked. A tall, white-haired old man roared, turning his body into a grey stone form. He charged at the Sentinels, leaving grey footprints that turned to stone. As he touched a Sentinel, it began to petrify, but it stopped quickly. The Sentinel transformed to match him, copying his ability. The Sentinel's right hand turned sharp and stabbed at him. Ah! The old man screamed as his abdomen was pierced and then thrown to the ground like trash. This scene repeated with other disciples facing similar situations. Whether invisibility, energy lasers, or other abilities, each Sentinel could replicate them. In a short time, more than half of the disciples were down, writhing in pain. A blue-haired girl, nicknamed Healer, frantically tried to heal members but couldn't keep up with the injuries. Eventually, a Sentinel grabbed her neck and lifted her. Ah! She screamed. Healer! Heidi and others shouted anxiously. The Sentinel didn't rush to kill, and Alessandro's voice came through the speaker. Where is your Messiah? Why hasn't he come out yet? End of chapter. Chapter 110. Listening to the middle-aged man's smug voice over the transmitter, both the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants were filled with concern at the sight of these powerful Sentinel robots. They can copy mutant abilities. Messiah-sama. Even the 12 disciples, who had great confidence in the Messiah, felt uncertain after facing these despair-inducing Sentinels. Although Messiah-sama was nearly godlike, dealing with these ability-copying entities might not be easy. Does the government know what they're researching? Flying in the distance, Tony frowned, feeling the Sentinel robots were too dangerous. He also harbored some doubts about whether the child could defeat them. At that moment, a beastly roar echoed. A large yellow tiger appeared out of nowhere, moving as swiftly as the wind, leaving only an afterimage as it leaped behind a Sentinel robot. Fine, hair-like golden-red tendrils emerged and struck the back of the black Sentinel robot like lightning. In an instant, the golden-red tendrils pierced through the Sentinel robot, which was too slow to react or change form. Seeing this, the X-Men, Brotherhood of Mutants, SHIELD, Hydra, and other onlookers were all astonished. The Sentinel robot was destroyed just like that. What is that thing? A tiger. After a moment of surprise, Tony and the others quickly recognized it. It's that mutant tiger that escaped from the zoo? Is it really that powerful? In response to the sudden attack, the remaining 9 Sentinel robots transformed into their steel forms. This gave Heidi and the other disciples a brief respite as they looked at the intruding tiger in amazement. Soon, the battle between the Sentinel robots and the mutant tiger began. Under countless gazes, the tiger, agile as a bullet, left numerous afterimages, dodging laser and physical attacks repeatedly. However, against the steel-formed Sentinels, its golden-red tendrils made no progress, causing almost no damage. Suddenly, the running tiger's body stiffened, becoming encased in a transparent crystal. Boom! 3 Sentinel robots seized the opportunity, their heads opening to release 3 thick yellow-red laser beams that instantly hit the tiger. Roar! With a painful roar, the tiger was blasted away by the laser beams. When the laser beams subsided, the onlookers saw its charred body, with most of it missing. Just when they thought the tiger was dead, it staggered to its feet, dragging its heavily damaged body. Tiny tendrils wriggled rapidly in its gaping wounds, seemingly healing. It devoured the corpse of a dead disciple, leaving only the skeleton. Then, its damaged body rapidly regenerated. Seeing this, Alessandro, secretly controlling the Sentinels, and Dr. Bolivar were both surprised. Not only them, but Logan and the others, along with the online audience, were also taken aback. This monster is hard to kill. It can still move even after that, without a vital point. I remember this mutant tiger is related to the Messiah, right? Even if it's just related to Messiah, it's this powerful. The onlookers were astonished and secretly admired the Messiah, thinking that if an influenced tiger was so formidable, what about the Messiah himself? Unfortunately, even though the tiger was powerful against the Sentinels, it was just struggling to survive. Indeed, as the Sentinels continued to attack, the tiger quickly fell into a disadvantage. Even with the remaining disciples' help, they were on the verge of defeat. The X-Men and Brotherhood of Mutants hesitated, unsure whether to step in. However, the Sentinels' strength made them wary. At this moment, as the 9 remaining Sentinels were pressing the disciples, they suddenly paused, ceasing their assault. While everyone was puzzled, the Sentinels looked in one direction and then flew towards it. What are they doing? Just as the crowd wondered, the middle-aged man's excited voice came through the transmitter. Messiah, is that you? You've finally come out. Messiah. The various forces were stunned and quickly followed the Sentinels. At this moment, the despairing disciples became excited. Following the Sentinels, they saw a young man in black standing at the side door of a building, confronting the Sentinels. Everyone immediately recognized the young man. It's Messiah. It really is him.
The X-Men, Brotherhood of Mutants, Hydra, S.H.I.E.L.D., Tony Stark, and other factions were all invigorated. Every eye was fixed on the young man, including the millions of viewers watching the live stream. Seeing the ordinary-looking young man standing there, they felt an invisible aura, a palpable tension. This was the rumored Omega-level mutant who destroyed a city. The ultimate threat among mutants. His terrifying power and identity made them tremble and feel suffocated. No matter how they belittled him before, facing him now, they couldn't deny their fear. Even without doing anything, his mere presence pressured them. Even Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar, controlling the Sentinels, felt the pressure. The transmitter carried Alessandro's low voice. Messiah, you finally showed up. This time, you will be punished. With that, Alessandro controlled the Sentinels to attack despite the pressure. Swish. Some Sentinels turned invisible, others opened their heads to fire lasers, and some even used the Crystal Man's ability to attack the Messiah. Wait! Under countless gazes, the Messiah, who had been pretending to be calm, suddenly showed panic and tried to shout something. But with a bang, he was struck by a feint from a Sentinel and sent flying. With a scream, Messiah hit a distant wall and spat blood. Alessandro, controlling the Sentinels, was stunned, as was Dr. Bolivar. Mystique Raven, Wolverine Logan, Cyclops Scott, and the remaining disciples were all stunned. S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, the Dabari aliens were all shocked. This child. Tony was dumbfounded. Even Professor Xavier, Magneto, and millions of viewers watching the livestream were no exception. After a moment of silence, chaotic discussions erupted. My God! Messiah was defeated? He was beaten and spat blood? At this moment, they felt their worldview crumbling and doubted everything. Could the Omega-level mutant Messiah, who destroyed a city, be defeated so easily? Even if they thought the Sentinels had a chance, it shouldn't have been this easy. Even Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar, controlling the Sentinels, couldn't believe it. Messiah-sama, you? How could this be? Heidi and the disciples, eyes red, felt their worship and admiration shatter. Was Messiah really so useless? In the midst of the shocked expressions, the fallen Messiah struggled to stand, looking panicked, trying to say something. At this moment, a hoarse, bloody voice echoed. No, you are not my master. It was the mutant tiger speaking. Everyone was stunned. They knew the tiger's relationship with the Messiah. Its words meant. Before they could react, the tiger hesitated and said something even more shocking. No. I sensed my master nearby. He must be here. Everyone was astonished. The tiger's words hinted that the real Messiah was still nearby. End of chapter. Chapter 111. What? Everyone was stunned. Initially confused by the Messiah's strange behavior, they were further baffled by the mutant tiger's claim that it sensed the Messiah's presence nearby. The mutant tiger carefully sensed again, and then directed its gaze toward a specific direction. Master, you must be here, the tiger exclaimed excitedly. Following its gaze, everyone instinctively made way, creating a large open space. Seeing this, Syd, hiding behind a building, shook his head and slowly stepped out. Dressed in his black attire, fluttering in the wind, his mysterious figure came into view. Recognizing the familiar face of the young man, they were taken aback. Another Messiah? At this moment. Yes, I'm a fake, an imposter. Don't kill me. The injured Messiah hastily confessed. As he spoke, his body shimmered and transformed into a middle-aged man right before everyone's astonished eyes. I used my illusion ability to disguise myself as Messiah. Initially, I just wanted to make some money, but the middle-aged man, Emin, explained with a bitter smile. The remaining disciples and the crowd were both shocked and furious. They had been fooled by a charlatan? Just then. How do we know you're not fake too? Alessandro's voice came through the transmitter. Suddenly, a silver sentinel robot moved swiftly toward Syd, the real Messiah. It raised its massive right hand, clenched into a fist, and swung at Syd with a powerful whoosh. Seeing this, the audience's eyes filled with anticipation. This time, they didn't immediately believe this was the real Messiah. Even the remaining disciples and Tony Stark shared similar thoughts, expecting to see Messiah being punched and sent flying, bleeding. As the fist approached, Syd frowned and instinctively raised his right hand to block. God Finger Experience +1. Their clash created the sound of shattering glass. Everyone saw the young man lightly raise his right hand, and with a bang, the Sentinel robot was flung away like an annoying piece of trash. With a loud crash, the Sentinel robot hit the ground, creating several cracks in the surface. Tony and the others looked over to see the Sentinel robot, its steel arm deformed and covered in large gashes from glass shards. It was clear that the Sentinel had suffered significant damage from a single blow. This? Everyone was astonished. One blow had severely damaged a Sentinel robot? The 12 disciples together couldn't take down a single one, and now it was easily handled? Wasn't he supposed to be sent flying by the Sentinel's punch? Is he the real Messiah? Slowly realizing this, they were struck by a wave of pressure. Regardless of their previous doubts, facing the real Messiah confirmed their fears. After all, this was the one who destroyed a city, the rumored Omega-level mutant. Even among millions of viewers, Tony and others felt the weight of this realization. At this moment. Ha, you're the real one. Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar, controlling the Sentinels, weren't disappointed by the failure. Instead, they seemed even more excited, possibly emboldened by defeating the fake Messiah. The remaining 8 Sentinels and one barely functioning Sentinel flew up, surrounding the black-clad Syd. Syd frowned and, under everyone's gaze, slowly ascended into the air. A haunting, ethereal tune began to play, and an invisible aura emanated from him. Floating, mysterious, ethereal. He appeared almost godlike. This kid. Tony was taken aback. Even with prior expectations, witnessing it firsthand gave him a unique feeling. No wonder this one was called Messiah. Even an imposter could gather many followers. It made sense. At that moment, Tony felt like he was looking at a god. The others who witnessed this shared similar feelings. However, seeing him face off against the Sentinels, they were uncertain who would win. Even Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto had their doubts. The Sentinels' previous display of abilities was indeed terrifying. At this moment, the Sentinels attacked. One Sentinel turned invisible, disappearing as if becoming air, likely preparing for a covert strike. Another transformed into a stone-like state and charged. Others opened their heads, glowing yellow-red, ready to fire lasers. To everyone's surprise, one Sentinel vanished from its spot in a flash. Seeing this familiar scene, Syd's eyes widened in surprise. Teleportation? How is this possible? No time to ponder. He disappeared from his position, sensing no danger. Teleportation experience +1. Sure enough. Behind him, a Sentinel's right hand, shaped like a spear, pierced through where he had just stood. If he hadn't teleported away, he would have been skewered. At this moment, Syd, finish them quickly. The longer this drags on, the more dangerous it becomes. And for some reason, my danger sense is acting up, sometimes working, sometimes not. It's strange. Venom urged anxiously. Without Venom's reminder, Syd already sensed something was wrong. That Sentinel just copied my teleportation? Syd's heart grew heavy. Rebound shield experience +1. He raised his hand, blocking several incoming laser beams. Though doubting the Sentinels could easily copy his abilities, he decided not to delay any longer. The next moment, Syd made his move. End of chapter.
Chapter 112, Black Particle Experience +1. Syd tentatively launched black particles. They shot forward like bullets at an incredible speed toward the nearest Sentinel robot. However, just as the particles were about to hit, a familiar scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. The Sentinel robot blurred and vanished, reappearing a short distance away. Syd frowned. What surprised him even more was that another Sentinel robot suddenly emitted a black wave from its hand. In the next second, familiar black particles shot toward him. Black particles? These Sentinels can really copy my abilities, Syd thought, his form flickering as he used teleportation to vanish from his spot. At this moment, Alessandro's voice came through the transmitter on the Sentinel robots. Ha ha ha, Messiah, I admit you're formidable and your abilities are terrifying, but how will you fight against yourself? Ha! The Sentinels just used your abilities. His voice echoed around Syd and was also heard by the onlookers from various forces and the millions of online viewers. Discussions erupted. Wow, no wonder those black things looked familiar. They're Messiah's abilities. Are Sentinels really that terrifying? Messiah is terrifying, but because he's so terrifying, these Sentinels have also become monsters. He can't possibly defeat opponents with his own abilities. Messiah is finished, ha ha ha. Not only the online audience thought this, but the X-Men and Brotherhood of Mutants also shared the same fear. These Sentinels were using Messiah's abilities, and Messiah was an Omega-level mutant. If they had to face Sentinels with Messiah's abilities, it was better to die quickly to avoid prolonged suffering. Seeing this, both Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto Eric felt a deep sense of dread for the future of mutants. There was a feeling that mutants were facing an apocalypse. At this moment, Alessandro's mocking voice continued through the transmitter. Facing your own abilities, do you feel powerless and afraid? Don't worry, soon you'll face several opponents with your abilities. Let's see how you win. As he spoke, Syd, surrounded by Sentinels, began to glow. Sunshine experience +1. A terrifying platinum-colored light burst from his body, rapidly spreading outwards. The light illuminated everything around him. Whether invisible or preparing to attack, all the Sentinels were enveloped by the light. It's useless. Seeing this, Alessandro's cold voice followed. It seemed he expected the Sentinels to copy this ability and use it to suppress Messiah into despair. Tony and others, far away, shared similar thoughts. But to Alessandro and Tony's surprise, when the light hit the Sentinels, they didn't replicate it. Instead, they kept switching forms: stone, diamond, steel. However, no matter how they changed, the light caused their materials to disintegrate into particles and ashes. For a moment, dust filled the air. The Sentinels struggled but to no avail, ultimately turning to ash and vanishing. When the light dissipated, all the Sentinels were gone. Seeing Syd still emitting a faint glow, Tony and the others immediately began to discuss. Is this the Omega ability of the Messiah? Scenes of city destruction replayed in their minds, making them feel suffocated and pressured. Damn it! Watching the darkened screen, Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar were dismayed and somewhat regretful. They hadn't ordered the Sentinels to escape earlier because they hoped to copy the Messiah's abilities. Now it was too late. Dr. Bolivar, why couldn't the Sentinels copy the Messiah's ability? Watching the scene through a drone's camera, Alessandro turned and asked. The short Dr. Bolivar frowned as he checked the data. Messiah's ability is complex and highly destructive, exceeding the limits of replication. Moreover, the current Sentinels aren't fully developed, they're prototypes. Their ability to copy relies on rogue. Alessandro nodded silently. He knew that the Sentinels' copying ability had flaws, similar to rogues. They had to be within a certain range to copy abilities and needed time to do so. Additionally, the copied abilities had a time limit, becoming ineffective after a while, just like rogue. If Rogue could infinitely store and absorb other mutants' abilities, she would have become invincible and wouldn't have ended up as their lab subject. Moreover, Sentinels couldn't use multiple mutant abilities simultaneously. Abilities like flight and lasers were inherent to the machines themselves. Too many shortcomings. Due to these flaws, Alessandro sought out SLD to invite the arrogant Tony to join and help improve the Sentinels. Unfortunately, Stark refused. Thinking about this made Alessandro furious. Activate the contingency plan, Dr. Bolivar suggested. Alessandro nodded. Back at the battlefield, as the light faded, Syd checked his remaining energy and breathed a slight sigh of relief. Thankfully, he hadn't used his full power with Sunshine and had tried to limit its range. Otherwise, his energy would have been entirely depleted. He was well aware of Sunshine's draining nature. Syd, we should leave quickly, Venom urged anxiously. Syd nodded. Without Venom's reminder, he also sensed something was wrong. The number of Sentinels seemed too few. With his current energy levels, facing more Sentinels that could copy his abilities would be challenging. Glancing at Tony, who was flying over to greet him, Syd didn't have time for pleasantries and quickly flew away. Watching his fading figure, Tony Stark's eye twitched. Jarvis, do you think this kid dislikes me? Sir, I believe that's not the case. AI Jarvis comforted. Indeed, as Jarvis predicted, not long after the child disappeared, 20 more Sentinels flew over from a distance. They all headed in the direction the child had disappeared. Tony raised an eyebrow, preparing to follow. Not only him, but others in the distance had the same idea. End of chapter.
Chapter 113. Iron Man moved swiftly, controlling his Mark armor as he flew in the direction the child had disappeared. Seeing Tony vanish, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents Coulson, Black Widow, and the recently thawed Captain America exchanged glances. We need to follow, Agent Coulson said. He quickly headed towards the parked vehicles. Once Captain Steve Rogers and Black Widow were in the car, he started it and sped off after Iron Man, violating several traffic regulations in the process. Other forces also sprang into action. X-Men. Hold on tight, Aurora said. Logan grumbled but grabbed her hand. Soon, a gust of wind carried them in the direction Iron Man had disappeared. Members of Hydra, the Dabari aliens, and others were not far behind. Millions of viewers watching the livestream were left astonished and bewildered. Is it over already? Weren't those Sentinels supposed to be invincible, able to copy any ability? Why did they suddenly become useless? Messiah just cleaned them up like trash? Of course, he's an Omega-level mutant. There might be some abilities they can't copy. Speculations ran wild among the viewers, who guessed that Omega-level mutants had special abilities that the Sentinels couldn't replicate. They also noticed the 20 Sentinels that followed. At this point, the confident voice of host Irena cut into the broadcast. "Don't worry, viewers. The Sentinels will catch up to the Messiah." As she reassured the audience, special livestream drones quickly followed. Meanwhile, Syd, far from pleased, noticed Sentinels guarding the city's edge. They spotted him and began to encircle. Frowning, Syd changed direction, soon evading the Sentinels. Thankfully, they hadn't copied his flying ability, or they would have caught up by now. About 2 kilometers away, Syd landed and blended into the city streets after confirming he had lost the Sentinels. Finding a secluded spot, he changed his appearance, donning Venom's mask and contacts, and reverted to his White Knight outfit. After pondering for a moment, he quietly made his way out of the city. On the way, he noticed several people looking for him. Suddenly, he spotted a familiar group. From a black car stepped a middle-aged man with a receding hairline and a suit, Agent Coulson of S.H.I.E.L.D. Alongside him were a slender woman in a black tactical suit with red-brown wavy hair, Black Widow, and a tall, muscular man in a star-spangled uniform carrying a red, white, and blue shield, Captain America Steve Rogers. S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Syd hesitated, preparing to change direction. However, Agent Coulson spotted him and quickly said to Captain America, "Captain, stop him." Steve nodded, holding his vibranium shield as he blocked Syd's path. Syd frowned slightly, unsure of their intentions. Agent Coulson ran over, looking at the white-clad figure in surprise. "White Knight," he said, astonished. "What are you doing here?" Familiar with this figure who had once shocked him and caught the attention of Director Fury, Coulson was curious. Apart from the newly thawed Steve Rogers, who was unfamiliar, Black Widow Natasha also recognized the White Knight, known for his impressive abilities. Though not as powerful as the Messiah, he was still formidable. What was his purpose here? Syd frowned, thinking quickly. In a slightly altered voice, he replied, "S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here for the same reason you are." Hearing S.H.I.E.L.D. mentioned, Natasha and Coulson were instantly on guard. This person knew about S.H.I.E.L.D. and recognized them? Coulson and Natasha, whose identities were highly classified, found this concerning. As for Captain America, who had been frozen for decades, it was even more surprising for someone to link him to S.H.I.E.L.D. Their suspicion grew. Are you here because of Messiah? If so, that makes sense. Their minds raced as they considered this possibility. The scene fell silent as both sides pondered what to say next when suddenly, a sound came from the sky. Looking up, they saw Tony in his red mark armor. "Hey, have you seen that kid?" Tony opened his visor, looking annoyed. He had lost track of the boy around here. Just then, some Sentinels, drawn by the commotion, approached. Tony and the others were caught off guard, but Syd frowned deeply. As the Sentinels drew closer, Syd said to Captain America, "Step aside. I have to leave." Steve looked at Coulson, seeking his input. Coulson spoke up, "I'm Agent Coulson of S.H.I.E.L.D. Our director wants to." Before he could finish, the White Knight moved to bypass Steve. "Sir." Steve started, reaching out to stop him. But before he could touch him, Syd's hand glowed red. "American sweetheart, don't block my way." In the next instant, Captain Steve Rogers was flung against a nearby building wall. Coulson and Natasha were shocked. "American sweetheart?" Tony Stark raised an eyebrow, amused by the scene, just as he was about to make a remark. "And you, Tin Man in a suit, don't think I didn't see you. Move aside too." In Stark's startled gaze, he was similarly flung against a distant wall with a bang. "Damn it, okay, you've got my attention. You've successfully caught my attention." End of chapter. Chapter 114. Tony, after being thrown against the wall, felt both a surge of irritation and a hint of surprise. The strength of this white-clad individual was unexpectedly formidable. When he tried to struggle against the person's grip earlier, his mark armor couldn't move at all. This realization made Tony take the White Knight more seriously. Steve felt similarly. Despite his super soldier serum-enhanced physique, which was several times stronger than that of a normal human, he had been effortlessly flung aside. Coulson's interest in this person was clearly justified. As for being called America's sweetheart, Steve instinctively ignored it. Not far away, Coulson watched in admiration. No wonder this guy is as famous as the Messiah lately. Neither Cap nor Tony could resist him. Syd, however, was more focused on leaving. He wanted to take advantage of this moment to get away, but several Sentinels had already surrounded him, clearly targeting him. Alessandro, secretly controlling the Sentinels, noticed this through surveillance cameras and his eyes lit up. He had been frustrated when Messiah seemed to vanish into thin air after they cleared the surrounding Sentinels. But if this White Knight could serve as a substitute, it would be worthwhile. Early on, both he and Dr. Bolivar had noted the potential of this person's abilities. Capturing or eliminating him and bringing his remains to the lab for research could be highly beneficial. Deciding to focus on the White Knight, Alessandro and Bolivar abandoned their search for the possibly escaped Messiah. Quickly, the Sentinels began to form a perimeter around Syd. The X-Men and other factions noticed the abnormality and followed the Sentinels. A few live-stream drones arrived first, broadcasting the scene. From a distance, millions of viewers saw what was happening. Is that Captain America and Iron Man? What are they doing there? Seeing these two superheroes together piqued the curiosity of the viewers. The fact that they seemed to have been attacked added to the intrigue. Some also noticed Syd in his white outfit. Soon, someone recognized him. My God, it's the White Knight. What's happening today? First Messiah, now the White Knight. Haha, great. Both disgusting mutants appearing together. Perfect timing to eliminate them. Right, Messiah's abilities are terrifying, but the White Knight is in trouble. These Sentinels are different this time. Let's see how he fights back. As more Sentinels surrounded Syd, some viewers, with violent tendencies, displayed excitement and anticipation for the upcoming conflict. Syd frowned, his hands glowing red as he floated up, attempting to leave. However, before he could move far, several Sentinels flew in front of him, blocking his path. At this moment, Alessandro's voice came through the hidden transmitters on the Sentinels. White Knight. Didn't expect to see you again. This time, you won't escape. Haha. Then, over 100 black Sentinels surrounded him. The sheer number was enough to shock the viewers and those observing from afar, including Wolverine Logan and other factions. Any one of these Sentinels could easily kill many mutants. Now there were over 100 of them? Even against Messiah, they had only deployed 10. Messiah had to exert effort to deal with 10 Sentinels, but now there were more than 100. This force could easily challenge Messiah, let alone the White Knight. X Academy. Watching the scene, Professor Charles Xavier sighed from his wheelchair. Another potential mutant is about to die, isn't he? At this moment, both he and Eric felt a sense of sorrow. Eric had even considered inviting this mutant to join the Brotherhood of Mutants. Though not an Omega-level mutant like Messiah, he was still a powerful level 4 mutant. But now, using cameras to capture the expressions of the onlookers, Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar felt pleased. They were proud of the Sentinels and eager to eliminate another powerful mutant. Syd's frown deepened as he surveyed the encircling Sentinels. He had considered escaping, but no matter where he went, the Sentinels blocked his path. The next second, under Alessandro's command, the Sentinels began to move. Some changed their forms, while others opened their heads, emitting yellow-red glows, ready to fire lasers. The following moment, nearly 100 thick laser beams surged towards Syd. Simultaneously, a layer of crystal began to spread over Syd, indicating the use of the Crystal Man's ability. Seeing this dire situation, Scott, Logan, Aurora, and others fell silent. Professor Xavier and Magneto felt a sudden tension, while Tony, Steve, Black Widow Natasha, and Coulson also remained silent. Many viewers' eyes lit up with anticipation. Yes, just like that. Mutants should be crushed like ants, not jumping around freely. At this moment, Alessandro smiled. In the face of danger, Syd's emotions fluctuated violently. Teleportation? Sunshine? No. Suddenly, an eerie red glow flashed. End of chapter. Chapter 115. Boom. 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 As nearly 100 laser beams were about to strike Syd, and the crystal was about to engulf him completely, an astonishing scene unfolded under everyone's watchful eyes. A red glow flashed on Syd's body, and then, boom, boom, boom. The laser beams slicing through the air abruptly transformed upon nearing Syd. They changed from energy into matter, turning into multicolored streamers. It was as if the Sentinel robots were celebrating Syd's birthday, continuously showering him with festive ribbons. Even the crystal covering his body turned into water, sliding off instantly. The scene fell into a stunned silence. What just happened? Is this real? Tony blinked hard, trying to clear his mind. Otherwise, how could he have seen laser beams turning into party streamers? Sentinel robots spraying the kid with streamers? What kind of joke was this? And the crystal on the kid's body turning into water and falling off? Crystal equals water? At this moment, Tony felt like his scientific worldview was being challenged. Then, his AI, Jarvis, chimed in, "Sir, if this isn't an illusion, then everything you're seeing is real. My data also indicates that the scene is accurate. Shit, so the unscientific event that just happened might actually be real? Tony's eyes widened in disbelief. Even Jarvis was confirming it, leaving Tony unsure of how to make sense of it. Others shared similar expressions at that moment. Steve glanced at Natasha and Coulson, clearly seeing the astonishment and shock in their eyes. Obviously, they had all witnessed the same thing. Professor Charles and Magneto were equally puzzled, unsure what to make of the situation. Rational thinking told them such a scene was impossible, yet it had undeniably occurred. Could this White Knight have illusion-casting abilities, like the fake Messiah? The exaggerated event led them to suspect that what they saw was an illusion. This thought crossed the minds of many viewers as well, given the precedent set by the fake Messiah. Among the Dabari aliens. This doesn't seem like an illusion, said Margaret, a platinum blonde with an elegant aura, her expression growing serious as she watched from a distance. Other Dabari aliens shared similar thoughts. As a technologically advanced race, they could somewhat distinguish between reality and illusion. If not an illusion, then what? The Dabari were filled with questions. Meanwhile, Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar, who had been controlling the Sentinels, finally snapped out of their stupor. They exchanged glances. It must be an illusion. Keep attacking him, Dr. Bolivar said with a smile. Alessandro nodded, immediately commanding the Sentinels to resume their assault. But before they could act, Syd made his move. Enveloped in red light, Syd felt a strange sensation. Instinctively, he opened his mouth and uttered a phrase. From a distance. What did he say? Anyone who can read lips, translate that. Given the earlier fantastical scene, many eyes were on Syd as he floated in the air. When he moved his lips, it was clear he was saying something, but due to the distance and his low voice, it wasn't audible. Among the crowd, Tony Stark asked Jarvis, what did he just say? Almost immediately, Tony received an answer. Sir, if I'm correct, he said. Sentinel robots should not exist. Tony paused, confused. Jarvis, are you sure? Did he really say Sentinel robots should not exist? As they conversed, Coulson, Steve, Natasha, and others nearby also heard and instantly reacted. Sentinel robots should not exist? That's what the White Knight said? Coulson and the others were perplexed. Why would he say something like that out of the blue? Was it out of fear, a desperate utterance before death? Thinking this way, it made sense. Perhaps the Sentinel's power had driven him to despair, leading to this final hopeless statement. Coulson and the others sighed inwardly. Even though Sentinel robots shouldn't exist, what could they do? They couldn't stop them. The captain gripped his shield, resolving to help mutants if their situation became dire. Though he couldn't stop what was happening now, he could still assist other mutants in the future. Among the millions of viewers, some lip readers quickly deciphered the phrase. Sentinel robots should not exist? The viewers found it amusing. He's still in the fight and suddenly says something like that. Is he giving up? Ha ha ha, maybe he's gone mad from despair. Why else would he say such nonsense? Ha ha ha. As the viewers laughed and anticipated the Sentinels' next attack, hoping to see the White Knight's demise, the unexpected happened. Boom, boom, boom. Nearly 100 yellow-red laser beams reappeared, aiming at the target. At that moment, under the watchful eyes of Tony Stark and the millions of viewers, a sudden change occurred. One by one, the Sentinels turned transparent, and in almost an instant, their entire forms vanished. Not only the Sentinels, but even the nearly 100 laser beams disappeared, as if they had never existed. It was as if they never existed in the first place. End of chapter. Chapter 116. Shock. Horror. The scene fell into an eerie silence. After a moment. What happened? Am I seeing things? Where did the Sentinel robots go? Everyone stared wide-eyed at the spot where the Sentinels and nearly 100 laser beams had suddenly vanished, unsure of what had occurred. How did the Sentinels just disappear out of nowhere? Was it an illusion? At that moment, a black beetle-like mechanical insect flew out, with a panicked voice coming from it. You in white, what did you do just now? Where are my Sentinels? They vanished, my god. What did you do? Right after the White Knight spoke, Alessandro noticed the screen went black, and the cameras on the Sentinels seemed to disappear. Initially, he didn't think much of it until he tried to control the Sentinels and realized they were gone. Vanished. As Alessandro's voice trailed off, everyone who had thought this was an illusion stood stunned. It wasn't fake? The Sentinels really disappeared? What did he do? Tony and the others were both shocked and confused. Suddenly, someone thought of something. Wait, didn't he say something before? Something about the Sentinels shouldn't exist. Agent Coulson was in a daze. At his words, Tony and those around him connected the dots. Yes, if there was anything unusual before the Sentinels vanished, it was the White Knight's words. Sentinels shouldn't exist? Did he erase the Sentinels? Shit, are you telling me that just because of one sentence, those black robots disappeared? Because of a single sentence? This defied logic so much that Tony found it hard to believe. Not just him, but Steve, Natasha, and Coulson also found it difficult to accept. Wasn't that supposed to be a desperate utterance before his death? Spoken out of hopelessness and despair? How could something so absurd be true? But the problem was, it had happened. Because of a single sentence, over 100 Sentinels vanished into thin air. Captain America and the others were left with nothing but confusion and shock. Meanwhile, the millions of viewers who had been mocking the situation were equally stunned. The image of the White Knight dying in despair didn't appear. Instead, the Sentinels were gone, eliminated? Did the Sentinels really disappear? Wasn't he supposed to be driven mad by despair, babbling nonsense? How did it come true? Among the Dabari aliens, Margaret and the other aliens wore expressions of disbelief, their disguised faces frozen in shock. Before coming to Earth, their target had been the incredible Phoenix Force. But that power had been destroyed by a human? Defeated by a power wielded by a human native? They had found it incredible then, thinking this planet must be extraordinary to produce a force capable of contending with a phoenix. Now, they were shocked to discover yet another incredible power. Margaret and her people's eyes gleamed with both excitement and greed. X Academy. What kind of power is this? Professor Charles Xavier was in awe. Brotherhood of Mutants. Magneto murmured in shock. Is this a mutant ability? Wasn't this White Knight supposed to be a level 4 mutant? What exactly had happened? An illusion? A fake? Or was it real? As they were lost in their astonishment, Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar hurriedly checked on the remaining Sentinels outside the city. To their shock, they couldn't contact those Sentinels either. Even their tracking devices had vanished, as if they had evaporated. This left them both terrified. Suddenly, Dr. Bolivar thought of something and, with wide eyes, urgently instructed, "Check the warehouse Sentinels now." Alessandro quickly connected to the warehouse camera, only to be greeted by an empty space. The bright warehouse was entirely empty. Hundreds of Sentinels had vanished without a trace. Not one remained. This is impossible. This must be an illusion. Hundreds of Sentinels in the warehouse disappeared as well? Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar exclaimed. Not only had the Sentinels in Messiah City vanished, but the ones in their warehouse too? How could this be? If it were just the Sentinels in Messiah City, they might suspect signal interference. But those in the warehouse? The warehouse is dozens of miles away from Messiah City. At such a distance, it's impossible. What did he do? Alessandro was horrified. As they were reeling in shock, everyone else who had been speculating and comforting themselves with the idea that it was an illusion also stood stunned. Due to Alessandro's hasty actions, he forgot to turn off the transmitter, so his exclamations were broadcasted to millions of viewers, as well as Tony Stark and the others. At this revelation, everyone, including Tony, froze again. Earlier, they had entertained the idea that the Sentinels might have vanished because of a single sentence. Still, in their minds, it was just the 100 Sentinels they had seen. Now, the voice over the transmitter revealed that hundreds of Sentinels stored miles away had also disappeared. Shock. Horror. Once again, they recalled that seemingly absurd statement. Sentinels shouldn't exist? Because of this one sentence, all the Sentinels disappeared. Ha ha ha, hey, maybe I haven't woken up. An unscientific occurrence from a dream happened? The spectators felt their minds were about to explode, teetering on the brink of madness. End of chapter. Chapter 117. Otherwise, how could something so insane happen? Just because he said, Sentinel robots shouldn't exist, they actually disappeared? At this moment, inside the Mark armor, Tony heard the voice of his AI, Jarvis. Sir, based on analysis, there is a high probability, over 60%, that the individual before us altered reality. Tony was stunned and said, Jarvis, are you saying there's a 60% chance that this guy in white altered reality and erased the Sentinels? Jarvis replied, Yes, sir. Remember what happened moments ago. The lasers turned into streamers, and the crystal turned into water. That was likely real. It's probable that the White Knight altered them, transforming them into these forms. He twisted and changed reality. As the words sank in, Tony instinctively took a deep breath. He swore that ordinary events wouldn't shock him, but what Jarvis had just analyzed was truly. The nearby people, including Captain America, were equally stunned. "Mr. Stark, what did you just say?" Agent Coulson asked, dazed. Tony didn't hide anything and explained Jarvis's analysis in detail. After hearing it, Natasha and the others were instantly shocked. Altered reality with a single sentence? "Mr. Stark, is this abnormal event real?" The people around quickly understood what was going on. Shocked murmurs arose immediately. My God, did he really alter reality with a single sentence? Reality changed because of a single sentence? What kind of power is this? Gazing at the figure floating in the sky, clothed in white and exuding an aura of mystery, they were filled with indescribable awe. What kind of power is this? What kind of ability? At this moment, Jarvis's voice continued, now echoing around due to Tony not limiting the output. "Sir, if all of this is true, then this White Knight is very likely another Omega-level mutant. This power is extremely dangerous, sir. I estimate it has the potential to spiral out of control, as mutants often do. If this White Knight were to lose control and say a random sentence, the world would change. Humans might vanish, or the apocalypse might come." As Jarvis spoke, everyone around felt a surge of fear and shock. Even the nearby livestream drones picked up these words, broadcasting them to millions. An Omega-level mutant? My God! They first reeled from the mention of Omega. Currently, the only known Omega-level mutant was Messiah, and they had all seen the terrifying power he wielded, capable of destroying cities. And now, another Omega-level mutant? Another Omega-level mutant? Wait, if twisting and altering reality was real, then this individual truly must be an Omega-level mutant. Only an Omega-level mutant could do such things. Following that, the potential horrors Jarvis outlined made everyone gasp. Humanity might disappear? The apocalypse might come? This power was too terrifying. The fact that it could be real was what made it so frightening. Everyone felt a chill, and those in power turned gravely serious. Could it be possible that with a single sentence, their country might vanish? Their hearts trembled, eyes fixed on the mysterious White Knight on the live stream. Members of Hydra, along with former S.H.I.E.L.D. director and secret Hydra leader Alexander Pierce, all felt a surge of desire. Ha ha ha, an Omega-level mutant indeed. This man will be our ultimate weapon. If we control him, then they could rule America. No, they could rule the entire world. America, China, all nations would bow to Hydra. If they combined the powers of Messiah and this new Omega-level mutant, who could resist them? Pierce's eyes gleamed with ambition. Meanwhile, among the Dabari aliens, Margaret and the others felt even more excited, their breathing becoming heavier. This power is what we need. The Phoenix Force was gone, and this human's power seemed even more wondrous and terrifying. With this human's power, their civilization could be restored instantly. X Academy. Sitting in his wheelchair, Professor Xavier felt both gratified and shocked by the emergence of another Omega-level mutant, but also deeply troubled. Just one Omega-level mutant Messiah had already caused unimaginable disasters, and now there was another one. If this one lost control too. Just imagining the scene sent chills down Xavier's spine. He could also foresee the trouble this new Omega-level mutant would face. If captured and controlled by malicious forces, it would spell disaster. The ultimate threat to humanity. And mutants. Xavier's eyes turned serious. Brotherhood of Mutants. Seeing the same scene, Eric's eyes burned with fervor. Another Omega-level mutant? And his Omega-level power. With his help, mutants would no longer be oppressed by humans. At this moment, he was already thinking about how to bring him over and persuade him to use his powers. As they watched the mysterious White Knight floating in the air, eyes filled with awe and terror. After shouting those words, the red glow around Syd gradually faded. He felt a wave of emptiness, his body swaying as he nearly fell to the ground. Fortunately, with the sunlight restoring some of his energy, and using Orochi's floating ability, he managed to stay aloft. With his heightened senses, thanks to his divine physique, he heard the nearby conversations clearly. Syd's mouth twitched, feeling that they were overthinking and filling in too many gaps. End of chapter. Chapter 118. Dee felt exasperated, thinking they were overreacting. If he were truly that powerful, would he still be pursued by Sentinels? The idea of humanity disappearing or an apocalypse was sheer nonsense. Even in the state of chaos magic activation, he couldn't alter reality to that extent. Chaos magic was only at level 4 for him, and he could clearly sense a range within which it was effective. Although the range was considerable, it was nowhere near as terrifying as they imagined. Even the Sentinels in the warehouse disappeared only because they were relatively close. Moreover, he had already exited the state of chaos magic activation. It was a passive ability, and its occurrence was indeed passive. In truth, whether in comics or movies, even the Scarlet Witch could not control this ability freely most of the time. Otherwise, she would have been invincible, and no one could resist her. Of course, there were benefits to this situation. At least this time, Syd didn't feel any issues with his interface. Only his internal light energy was depleted, unlike the berserk state of the serpent's power. Still, he sensed that this chaos magic incident wasn't a true outburst, merely a small-scale event. It was similar to the scene in Doctor Strange 2, where the Scarlet Witch casually erased Black Bolt's mouth. It was an occasionally triggered, controllable state. And as everyone knows, chaos magic is truly terrifying only when it loses control completely. As he pondered, Syd suddenly thought of something. I wonder if I'm mimicking the movie version of the Scarlet Witch or the comic version? If it were the movie version, that would be manageable. If it were the comic version, then things would indeed be more outrageous. At this moment, feeling the light energy slowly returning within him and seeing the still shocked crowd in the distance, he pondered. Given the drained state of his light energy, staying here would be too dangerous. It would be best to leave quickly before they could react. With that thought, he moved immediately, his hands glowing red with chaos magic, though he was actually using the serpent's floating flight ability. The next second, he vanished from the spot, quickly moving away. Seeing him disappear, the crowd finally snapped out of their shock. The White Knight is gone. The new Omega-level mutant just ran away? Some people felt regret for not stepping forward to stop him. After all, this was an Omega-level mutant, someone on the same level as Messiah. Others felt a sense of threat and a desire to eliminate this new Omega-level mutant. If this new Omega-level mutant couldn't be controlled, it would be best to eliminate him. In reality, such a significant threat shouldn't exist. This sentiment wasn't just in the hearts of those in power. Millions of viewers watching the live broadcast felt the same. Just imagining the new Omega-level mutant's powers made them shudder. No one wanted to suddenly die. This new Omega-level mutant seemed even more terrifying than Messiah. At least Messiah's power had a process that allowed them to understand their death. But this new one, Omega-level mutants are monsters, freaks. How can such beings exist? Messiah is disgusting enough, but this Omega-level mutant is even worse. Damn it! In their fear, they hoped the government could solve this problem. Some even took action, sending emails or making calls to complain. At the live broadcast site, watching the disappearing White Knight, Tony hesitated but didn't pursue. Compared to Messiah, he was less inclined to confront this presumably adult individual with such dangerous mutant abilities. At that moment, someone in the crowd spoke up. Does anyone know the identity of this White Knight? What does he look like? With those words, Tony and others remembered that the White Knight had always kept his identity hidden since his first appearance. No one knew what he looked like or who he was. In the next moment, various factions started planning. The next step was to uncover this person's identity. Not just because he was one of the only 2 remaining Omega-level mutants, but also because of his abilities. Knowing his identity would make it easier to find him and formulate targeted plans. While they were considering this, Syd, now far away, noticed several tails following him, indicating someone was trying to track him. Fortunately, with his current speed, he quickly shook off those pursuers. Additionally, with his keen mental senses, Syd felt a faint sense of surveillance from above. In an instant, he realized what was happening. Satellites are monitoring me? Syd's face darkened. All this relentless pursuit had also left him feeling annoyed. In a flash, he thought of the research base. Taking advantage of the recent chaos magic outburst that wiped out the Sentinels, the research base should have minimal defenses now. I should go and destroy it. Syd's eyes lit up. He had wanted to do this for a while but had previously felt his power was insufficient, and the base likely had many Sentinels, so he had shelved the idea. But now, Syd's figure flickered as he sped up. His hands glowed red as he used chaos magic to boost his speed. To avoid satellite surveillance, he chose routes with many buildings and trees. He also used spatial transfer a few times to evade the feeling of being watched. Sensing the surveillance lift, Syd sighed in relief. The next targets are to destroy that base and increase my power. Syd felt his current power was still somewhat lacking. Facing over 100 Sentinels before, if not for the fortunate chaos magic outburst, he might not have survived. He needed to increase his power enough to withstand 100 Sentinels. Moreover, he knew that the Sentinels were only temporarily eradicated. He didn't believe those people wouldn't continue their production. Soon, he might face even more Sentinels. If he didn't strive to increase his power, he might as well be waiting for death. I wonder what it's like to be at the father level. Syd suddenly thought of the father level power. Currently, the threats he could encounter were at the father level, like the Ancient One and Odin. But neither had truly shown their full power. Even when the Ancient One fell to his death, it was more like a small skirmish, displaying close combat prowess. Syd seriously doubted that this was merely a case of holding back power. It seemed more like a deliberate restraint. Even Doctor Strange, who had trained in magic for just a few years, could use various dazzling spells and hold off Thanos for a while. End of chapter. Chapter 119. The Ancient One, who had lived for hundreds of years, seemed so weak, unable to use any powerful magic. Was that possible? Even a pig, with dull intelligence, would learn something after practicing magic for hundreds of years, at least better than Doctor Strange. So, Syd suspected that the Ancient One had intentionally sought death, putting on a show of weakness. As for Odin, due to aging and other factors, his displayed power was also limited and unremarkable. However, during the events of Ragnarok, the fire giant Surtur, who destroyed Asgard, showed a glimpse of the power of a father-level being. In the end, he destroyed Asgard with a single sword strike, a truly shocking scene. Given enough time, Surtur could probably destroy Earth as well. Aside from them, there were also the even more powerful Celestials. Syd remembered that there was a Celestial incubating in Earth's core. Once it successfully emerged, it would mean Earth's destruction. Syd frowned. Forget it, I won't think about that now. I need to restore my internal light energy first, then destroy that research base. Time quickly passed. Soon, the next day arrived. As dawn broke, the golden sunlight spread across the land. A series of footsteps echoed in the distance as Syd looked out. He saw familiar large walls and black-clad guards. It was Base 23. At this moment, Syd was dressed in black, returning to his Messiah attire. His internal light energy had fully recovered. The next second, he stepped towards the base's main gate. At the gate of Base 23. Currently, 4 black-clad guards were chatting while on duty. If it weren't for that Messiah, we wouldn't have been sent here to guard this place. John, a blonde man, complained with a grimace. The thought of his colleagues slacking off inside while they had to guard under the blazing sun irritated him. His words quickly gained the sympathy of the other 3. Exactly, that disgusting mutant. If I ever meet him, I'll shoot him down with a few bursts. Clint, a burly bearded man, picked up his black rifle, mimicking shooting it with a bang 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 gesture. Hearing this, the others laughed heartily. Haha, Clint, you're all talk. If you really met Messiah, you'd turn into a coward. Right, haha. Clint retorted, coward? If I meet him, I'll shoot him down and show him my might. As they joked about Messiah, Syd appeared in their view, coming around the parked vehicles. Stop. Seeing the approaching figure in black, John and the others frowned. Who was this sudden arrival? Just a passerby? Curious to peek into the base? Either way, a bit of intimidation would make him leave in a hurry. As they thought this, the approaching figure got closer, and their eyes widened in horror. Me Messiah? It's you? What are you doing here? This black-clad figure with a familiar face was unforgettable, even if he turned to ashes. Ah! They screamed in terror, instinctively taking a few steps back, ready to flee. Their earlier bravado vanished. Now faced with Messiah, they lacked the courage to even pull the trigger. The psychological pressure of confronting Messiah was overwhelming. His mere presence almost made them wet their pants. Legs trembling, they attempted to run. However, they didn't get far. Syd's hands glowed blue. The next second, a blue energy beam shot out. Blue light flashed. With a swift motion, the fleeing guards were cut down, their blood spraying as they fell. A blast from the energy beam left a crater about 1 or 2 meters deep. The 4 men, with expressions of resentment and unwillingness, fell headless to the ground. Damn Messiah, why did you come here? No! They died in despair, without even managing a single shot. Throughout, Syd barely glanced at them. They were nothing more than insects. With his current power, Syd thought casually. However, the energy beam's upgraded effect was indeed impressive and convenient. After dealing with the guards, Syd turned his gaze to the solid silver gate. Previously, he had escaped through spatial transfer, but now, the next second, his hands glowed blue again. With a swift motion, the blue beam sliced across the silver gate. However, to Syd's surprise, the energy beam at its current level didn't cut through the gate completely, only leaving a deep gash. The gate was unexpectedly thick. In the next moment, the blue beam's power surged, and the gate was completely severed, toppling inward. With a loud crash, the gate fell, raising a cloud of dust in the sunlight. What's that sound? What happened to the gate? Black-clad guards and soldiers looked on in shock. At that moment, an alarm blared, signaling an external breach. An intruder? Who dares invade? Are they insane? As the alarm rang out, guards, soldiers, researchers, and prisoners alike were bewildered, finding it hard to believe anyone would dare invade the base. After the last incident with that woman, security had been tightened. Now, whoever dared to break in was doomed. A flurry of footsteps echoed as hundreds of black-clad guards and soldiers rushed to the gate. They saw a black-clad young man walking towards them as if taking a casual stroll, his gaze sweeping over them indifferently. So arrogant, insane? But as they got a clear look at his face, their thoughts changed. Messiah! Ah! Cries of shock rang out. Syd ascended into the sky, his aura intensifying. He looked down at them coldly. The ethereal, urgent music that accompanied his rise heightened their sense of suffocation. End of chapter. Chapter 120. Messiah actually came to the base? Seeing the young man floating in the air with a cold expression, hundreds of guards and soldiers were shocked and terrified. This guy could destroy a city. As members of Base 23, they knew well where Messiah originally came from. He escaped from their very base. His purpose for coming here was clear to them in an instant, and fear filled their eyes. Meanwhile, the situation was being broadcasted live through various surveillance cameras. Alexandros and Dr. Bolivar watched the scene with wide eyes. Everyone, don't be afraid. Messiah is just a human. He can die like anyone else. Open fire. Suddenly, someone shouted, and gunfire erupted. Bang 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 bang. A series of powerful bullets were fired from their rifles. Deflection shield +1. In no time, thousands of spinning bullets were aimed at Syd. However, as the bullets approached him, they seemed to disappear as if sinking into water. As members of Base 23, they knew this was coming. The base had prepared for this, equipping everyone with bulletproof shields. In the next moment, they all raised their shields in front of them. Syd was slightly surprised and stopped reflecting the bullets, switching to a mode he had rarely used. In the void space storing the bullets, their material and kinetic energy were converted into blue energy. The next second, a massive blue energy ball formed and flew towards the hundreds of guards and soldiers. Boom! Blue light burst forth, and energy exploded, accompanied by screams. In one strike, more than a dozen people died. Even with their shields, they were not spared. If the explosion's range had been larger, more would have perished. Syd didn't stop, his hands glowing with blue light. The names of the skills may change slightly. I did it because it fits more, but you will still know which skill is. Energy beam +1. Boom! A blue energy beam slashed across. Ah! Monster! In an instant, another 6 or 7 people died, leaving the surviving guards and soldiers with terror and hatred in their eyes. Syd didn't care what they thought and continued his assault. Energy beam +1. Energy beam +1. Blue energy beams shot from his hands, cutting down enemies like harvesting wheat, creating a bloody and brutal scene. In less than 30 seconds, he had eliminated half of them. Run! The remaining guards and soldiers, terrified, abandoned any thoughts of fighting and turned to flee. But as they ran ahead, Syd floated behind them, continuously attacking. With the amount of energy he had now, he could sweep through the entire base if the energy beam didn't reach level 4. Buildings collapsed, and people died continuously. Fire broke out in the base, and screams of agony filled the air. Hovering in the air, Syd reached the research area. Seeing those escaping in white lab coats, young, middle-aged, and elderly, Syd's expression remained cold. He raised his right hand. Energy beam +1. Boom! Ah! Help! Among them, he saw a few familiar faces, the ones who had injected him with cancer cells. Syd gathered these 6 individuals together. You monster! Don't kill me, let me go. I know I was wrong. The 6 of them spoke in terror, some cursing in anger, others kneeling and begging for mercy. To those who had given him cancer and from which he hadn't yet fully recovered, he had nothing to say. Energy beam +1. Blue light flashed, and the legs of the 6, from the thighs down, were instantly severed. I curse you, you murderous fiend. You will go to hell when you die. Freak, if you have the guts, kill us. Screams, curses of hatred, and groans of pain echoed continuously. Listening quietly, Syd found it somewhat amusing. If I'm going to hell, what about you who experiment on people so casually? And I can tell you ordinary people one thing. Hell is real. You're definitely going there, huh? Maybe Mephisto will welcome you warmly. Syd instantly thought of the rulers of hell dimensions, including Ghost Rider, who was related to Mephisto, a lord of hell, and the rumored god. With gods like Odin and the Greek pantheon, there naturally was the Hebrew god, and even Egyptian deities. Of course, Marvel's gods seemed to have several versions, not as terrifying as DC's. As for whether he would go to hell after death, Syd wasn't sure. Generally, gods turned into energy upon death, as did Jane Foster, who wielded Mjolnir and died of cancer. Her body also turned into energy. The soul might go to the so-called Valhalla or just dissipate. As for himself, if someone could indeed kill him, whether his soul would remain or be destroyed was still a question. At that moment, hearing his words, the 6 researchers paused, staring at him in disbelief. Hell? Is hell real? They widened their eyes, filled with fear. After glancing at them, Syd turned to destroy other parts of the base. As for them, they weren't so lucky. Unlike Wolverine, they didn't have a healing factor and would slowly die in despair and pain from the severed limbs. In a few minutes, they'd fall into shock, and in about 10 minutes, they'd be dead. No one would save them. The base was in chaos, and those trying to escape wouldn't bother calling 911 for ambulances. Floating in the air, Syd's hands continued to glow blue. Unconsciously, he found himself in the prisoners' area. The prisoners, who had been terrified and clueless about the commotion, widened their eyes as they recognized the familiar figure floating above. It looks like Messiah? My God, he's destroying the base? What incredible power. So this is the power of number 37. Can a mutant be this strong? They stared in disbelief. End of chapter.